Good.
So, Jody, thank you so much for having me. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to be here. This is my second time being in this trophy room with you, and I've been looking forward to this one for a while. This happens to be our first attempt at a recorded podcast, so I'm thanking you for your willingness to give it an experiment. I heard you just got back from your trip to Africa. How was that?
It was very good. I've been there many times. The reason I went to Africa was I had no intention of going to Africa till I was about my age now. A lot of hunters really have no interest until they maybe get older, because they want to get the North American animals. But I was at a convention, the Pope and Young convention, which is like the Boone and Crockett Club, but it's for bow and arrow hunters. So I was at that convention, and I paid $10 to get 5 raffle tickets, and I won the hunt. So it was an all expenses paid bow hunt for the hunter and wife. Airfare was paid for. It was a 7-day hunt, and I changed it to a 14-day hunt. And there was 6 or 7 animals included in that package. So once I went to Africa, I fell in love with it. It was absolutely phenomenal. And their winter is when you hunt there. So June, July, August into September is the best time to hunt. That's their winter. So as a school teacher, it fit my schedule perfectly. So to hunt North American animals, the best time to hunt is September, October, and November. Generally, while I'm teaching
During
September, October, November, it was difficult to get to go and ask the principal for time off to hunt when I just had 3 months off.
Right.
So Africa fit perfectly with my schedule. So I've been back, I don't know how many times, at least 15 times. This trip was not a hunting trip for me. I arranged to have 4 other bow hunters come along with me, and my wife Jenny came and son Christopher came, and I just was there to kick back, have a good time, and watch those 4 hunters experience their first time in Africa.
Was this family members, or did you bring along friends?
No family members. A former student came along. Clayton Schmucker was with me on that trip, and he had a phenomenal time. So I had taught Clayton in high school.
What were you guys going for?
Really what's called the plains game, which is what you see in the movies, the different antelope species. There's a lot. There's probably 30 different antelope species in Africa, in southern Africa, which is where we were. And I had a ball. So it's a different kind of hunt. It's not a hard hunt. It's a relatively easy hunt. It's flat. The weather's perfect. You know, it's 40 degrees in the morning, 75 degrees in the afternoon. It never rains during their winter, or very rarely rains. There's no mosquitoes at that time of the year. There's no snakes. There's no worry about malaria or any of those kinds of things at that time of the year. And it's a lot of action, you see a lot of animals. So you might, to hunt North American animals, you might work for 6, 7 days just to get one shot, and work really hard at getting that one shot. Well, in Africa, that's not going to happen. So as a bow hunter, you need the animal close, so we hunt over water holes. And it's a great time to hunt in South Africa or anywhere in Africa during those months, because it's their dry season and it's their winter. Their rainy season is probably from November through, say, March, and it's extremely hot. So it's not a great time to hunt. So as a bow hunter, you want them close. You're going to probably sit at a water hole waiting for the animals to come into the water.
Have you been bow hunting strictly your whole life, or do you also mix in rifle?
I don't mix in. I'm strictly a bow hunter. The only thing I'll go after with a gun is a turkey. I've hunted turkey, gotten them with a bow, but if you want to get a turkey, the bow and arrow is not really the way to do it. They're incredibly difficult to get with a bow and arrow. So if you want the experience of hunting turkey, calling them in close, you don't want to take all that time and go through all that effort and then get busted because you got to draw the bow back, right? They're going to see you unless you're in a ground blind or something. So, but the only other time that a rifle's been used on any of my hunts is if I unfortunately wound an animal, and I make the decision, okay, let's put it down. Let's get it finished off. But, there's very few animals in this room. I don't know how many are here. 60, 70, I don't know, with all the deer. And there's only been 2 or 3 that I've had to use a rifle for. All the rest.
Do you know which ones?
It's a black wildebeest over there. It's one of the goats up there at the top, one of the mountain goats. The bigger one, Billy. And I was able to redeem myself a few years later and drew a tag in Utah and was able to get one with a bow.
Was that the 1 in 400,000 chance tag that you got?
It was a tough tag. A lot of these tags are difficult to get, and we can go into that, and I can explain that if we get to it.
Yep.
But yes, a lot of these tags are very, very difficult to get. I just drew a Maine moose tag. So I'll be hunting Canadian moose in Maine in a few weeks in September. I probably put in 25 years to build up enough points where I had a reasonable chance of drawing that tag. And I can go over other animals where it's taken me a long, long time to earn enough points. Your name is in the hat more often. So every year that you put in, you get a point.
Yep.
So if you put in for 5 years, your name is in the hat 5 times. Or there's a system called a preference point system where the people that have been putting in the longest, people that have the most points will get a higher percentage of the non-resident tags. So a preference point, if you're at the top of the list, you have a much greater chance of drawing that tag because the wildlife agencies figure you put in all these years, you've paid your dues, you paid us a lot of money to stay in the system, and then you're rewarded by getting preference. So in Wyoming, for example, for sheep, 75% of the non-resident tags go to the people with the highest number of points. 25% of the non-resident tags go to everybody else of the non-residents. So that's a little summary of how the point system works.
Yeah, I think that segues into a good way to describe. I mean, is this one of the largest trophy rooms in, do you know, like collections in Pennsylvania?
I don't know about Pennsylvania, but there's trophy rooms that'll knock your socks off that are much more elaborate than this, many more animals than this. They'll have, you can get a mountain put in. I can make that whole wall back there into like a Cabela's.
Yep, I was just
mountain. I mean, there's trophy rooms there that are like museums.
I mean, this has to be up there. It's incredible. And trophy hunting, we were talking about earlier, is for a lot of people a very controversial topic, and I think it's just the value of explaining. I would love you to explain almost the necessity for why hunting and trophy hunting exists.
I don't consider myself a true trophy hunter. I'm going to go after the biggest animal that I can find because hunting is supposed to be a challenge, right? And the older animals are smarter than the younger animals, and generally the ones with the bigger antlers are the ones that are the dominant animal. And to become the dominant animal, you gotta be pretty darn smart. So it adds to the challenge of it. So it's not so much the head for me or the animal for me, because if it was, I would be a rifle hunter, right? And I have no problem with hunting with a rifle, zero problem. It's just not how I want to do it. So I am always willing to, so that I can get the bow hunting experience, come home with a lesser animal than I may have been able to get if I could shoot 300 yards, which I can't with a bow. So for me, it's all about the experience. And I think trophy hunting is much more about the experience than ending up with, quote unquote, the trophy back in the room. So I think most hunters would agree with me that it's all about the memories of the hunt. And you try not to waste anything, right? So all the meat's got to comes back out. If I don't bring it home, it goes to a food bank, or it goes to, some hunter sharing the harvest program like we have in Pennsylvania, or I give it away to the outfitter or the guides, and I try to bring some of it home, but a lot of it's not possible to bring home. Now, when I go to Maine in a few weeks, I'm going to drive up. I'll take a bunch of coolers up with me, and if I get one, I'll pack all that meat back here. But the meat doesn't go to waste. Now, what's left after the meat doesn't go to waste? Well, then it's the hide, the horns, the antlers. So this, to me, these are beautiful animals, and it's just another way of utilizing the entire animal and not just part of it. So the meat is entirely used, and when I bring an animal home, often it's been in my luggage. I'll bring a hide home with me. It gets salted, it gets dried, and I always take an extra duffel bag so I can bring the hide home. And I try to bring the antlers home with me. Usually airlines are pretty good about that. But I get where people get emotional about it, and I get emotional about it. When you hunt, you're taking a life, right? And it does affect you, right? It's not like, this is all fun and games, and something is going to die. That's the end goal, right? So something is going to die. You do feel emotional about it, and you can feel very emotional about the experience. I'll give you an example. In 2022, I went bighorn sheep hunting. I had enough points where I felt that I was going to draw that tag in Wyoming. So there were 3 units that I wanted to hunt. So there's a lot of different units, and there's different terrains in those different units, and different places that are better to bow hunt versus rifle hunt, right? So I always tune into those areas that I think will have the best bow hunting opportunity at that animal. So when you're on a hunt like that, you put in a tremendous amount of time, right? So if I'm going to hunt a bighorn sheep, as an example, I've got to get ready for that hunt. So that means a lot of exercising, a lot of putting the pack on and climbing up mountains, building my own arrows, practicing a lot with the bow, and just getting myself mentally ready. It's kind of like preparing for a big game, a big football game or a big basketball game or something. It's that kind of preparation. So there's a tremendous amount of time put into it. So anyway, it took me about 25 years to draw that tag. I probably could have drawn it a little bit earlier, but I wasn't ready. I knew it was probably going to be my last really serious hunt, and I wanted to kind of save it and do other hunts. So I had enough preference points, and there were 3 units that I wanted to draw. So I flew out to Wyoming twice, and I checked those different units, and I talked to different outfitters out there. And before I selected the unit that I wanted, so what I'm trying to get across is the effort and the time that it takes you have to put in to hunting and being successful, right? So I'm getting older. I can't climb mountains the way I used to. So I didn't want to put myself in a unit where I couldn't handle it physically. So I did my homework by going out to Wyoming a few times, checking out the terrain, riding around with outfitters, showing me the different kinds of terrain. What I was getting to about emotion was when I got the sheep. It was on the 4th or 5th day, phenomenal hunt. There were sheep everywhere. And I had some different stalks where I couldn't close the deal. It's tough to get close to a sheep. They're in the wide open generally, and they're in some very rough terrain. So it's difficult to get close. I could get within about 50 or 60 yards. That's a long shot for me, right? Some bow hunters are, they're capable of those kinds of shots. I can do those kinds of shots, but I'd rather not. I'd rather have it much closer than that. So anyway, I finally got a good shot of the sheep. We got the sheep. It took us a little bit to find it. It hadn't gone very far, but it's hard to track in those rocks, right? You can't see prints and whatnot. It was a little bit difficult to track. Didn't go very far. But when we came up on that sheep and the guy outfitter pointed to where it was, I didn't even go up to the sheep. I sat down on a rock and I cried my eyes out. I absolutely cried like a baby. And the reason I cried was I knew this was the end for me of those kinds of hunts. So that experience was over. I'm never going to do it again. So after having been on a number of sheep hunts and a number of mountain goat hunts, I knew that was the end for me of doing that kind of a hunt. So it's not just about the killing of the animal. It's about, the only way I can describe it's about the experience. And what I get to experience as a bow hunter is everything comes down to that one shot. All the preparation, the trips to Wyoming, practicing, climbing the mountains, the getting ready, everything comes down to one shot. So it's like you're in the NBA finals and you're coming down the court. There's 3 seconds left, you gotta make the 3-point shot. That's how it is with every single hunt. So imagine the excitement and the adrenaline that you feel when everything comes down to having to make it, right? Because if I don't make it, all that time, energy, and effort, it can be very, very disappointing in the end. So it's kind of like that. Or you're in the PGA and you know it's tied. You need to make a 15-foot putt. Right. That kind of energy and focus that has to go into that. So what I like about hunting is I get to experience that kind of challenge over and over and over again. It's incredibly exciting. Bow hunting to me is incredibly exciting because you have to be incredibly close with animals. You can imagine being within 20 yards of a Cape buffalo or the grizzly I got, which is up there. That was I was only 7 yards from that grizzly bear. That bear, that Alaska brown bear, which is also a grizzly bear, was a 12-yard shot. That lion, the lion was a 20-yard shot. So you can imagine the excitement that and the heart pounding that takes place when you're in that situation. Now you were asking about conservation. So I can talk forever about how hunters care about conservation, right? I want my grandchildren to be able to hunt if they want to, or if they don't want to, I want them to be able to go and look at the animal, take photographs, whatever. So conservation is very important. And hunters put a tremendous amount of money into conservation. So let's take a look at that sheep, just as an example. I put in for 25 years, okay? So that meant just to get 1 point, I had to put in $150 every year. I put in $150 every year for 25 years. And then I finally draw the tag, right? And then now I got to pay for the tag, which was probably $2,500. And so that money goes in, and all that money is used, all my license fees and the points that I built up over the years in different states for different animals, all that money goes back into the conservation of wildlife. So the other thing I like to bring up, and let me get back to one other way that hunters contribute. There's these things called governor's tags.
I haven't heard of that.
The governor's tag is where you haven't put into the lottery, you haven't built up points. I did everything on points. I never bought a governor's tag. They come up at an auction. So as an example, Pennsylvania has an elk season. So I apply, I build points every year for archery elk. Every year I pay $12, I think it is, after I buy my hunting license, put $12 in, I don't get the tag, I don't get drawn, I get a point. So all that money of thousands and thousands of hunters doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. So a governor's tag is where someone says, I can't wait. Maybe they're 60 years old, 70 years old. They say, look, I'll never hunt elk in Pennsylvania. I need to go through the governor's tag. Well, the governor's tag is extremely expensive. So it goes up on auction. Those tags are auctioned off through usually a hunting organization. Like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation was likely the organization that auctioned off the Pennsylvania Elk Governor's Tag. So I looked up before you came. I said, what's the most anybody paid for the Governor's Tag for an elk in Pennsylvania? It was $327,000. And then I put in, I said, well, what's the most anyone's paid for a bighorn sheep tag? You know, what's the most they paid for the Governor's Tag? It was $1.3 million. So those sheep tags, generally, those bighorn sheep tags for a governor's tag, and they're very limited. So Wyoming may only give out, I don't know, 5 or 10 of those, but they bring such big money, and it goes into the conservation of those sheep, paying the biologists to take care of the sheep, checking them out, make sure they don't get diseases and whatnot. So that tag went for $1.3 million. Generally speaking, if I'm at a convention or something and they're auctioning off those bighorn sheep tags, it's generally somewhere between $400,000 and the $1.3 million. $1.3 million is the most I've ever heard. All those governor's tag, all those monies are going back into conservation and wildlife. So I looked up also before you came. I said, how much of the budget is paid, of the Pennsylvania budget for the fish and game, how much of their budget is paid for with licenses? Now it was 17%, right? But it was a much higher percentage before, but what's happened is with that money that hunters have put in, they bought state game lands. Now state game lands are not just for hunters. Anybody can go on a state game land. Hunters, farmers, everybody gets to use the land that the hunters have paid for. So what's happened is with Pennsylvania becoming such a natural resource state with coal and fracking and whatnot, the Pennsylvania Game Commission has made a tremendous amount of money from those state game lands. So they don't need as much money from hunters. But I wanted to know how much of people's tax money goes into the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Of that, they said they get federal funds, but that's only 16%. So they're only getting 16% from the government. All the rest of that has been paid for through hunting and then buying lands that hunters bought and then using the natural resources. That's probably similar to what's going on in every state with the money that hunters are putting into to conservation. So the other thing I'd like to say is that people, what's controversial is the killing, right? But what people don't get often, I think, is that we're at the top of the food chain. That means we have a responsibility to manage everything under us. We're at the top. We need to manage what's underneath us. So often as somebody that's totally against hunting, what I will say to them often is, well, you're responsible for the killing of animals as well. I said, you're at the top of the food chain. You don't get a pass. And then I'll say, well, are you a vegetarian? Thinking that they'll say, no, I eat meat. Well, vegetarian is a good answer for me because every state allows farmers to take animals off of their crops so that everybody can have their vegetables. So Pennsylvania has different programs. They have what's called a DMAT program, Deer Management Assistance Program. That's for areas like Bernathen, where the deer population is too high. They give out extra tags. Because the deer are dangerous, right? People can hit them with cars. There's about a dozen people on average killed in the state of Pennsylvania from a deer car collision. Hundreds of people getting injured in deer car collisions. It's not responsible to not keep the population down. So the deer have to live amongst human beings. We're at the top of the food chain, but we have a right to be, we're part of nature as well. We have a right to be here also. So we're gonna be competing with wildlife. So it's our job to conserve them so that there's some kind of a balance between the human conflicts and the other things that an overpopulation of animals can cause. So, and then there's another thing called, I think it's called the AG program, or it used to be Red Tag, or maybe it's, I'm not involved with it, but I know it exists. A Red Tag system is where farmers can apply to the Game Commission for tags. They can give those tags out to hunters to hunt their land outside of the hunting seasons as well. So there's a big effort to keep animal populations reasonable so that vegetarians can have their vegetables. They don't get a pass.
Yep.
They are responsible for the death of animals also. They live in a house, they drive in a car, these roads are built, that destroys habitat. That changes the number of animals that you can have in an area. Human beings do not get a pass. We're all responsible for the death of animals. It's just that hopefully we can all agree that we want to be responsible with the management and the conservation of animals.
It's a great answer. And one of the examples too in Africa that I actually just came upon the other day was, trophy hunting or hunting in general goes hand in hand in conservation. You can't separate the two. In 1974, they put a ban on hunting elephants, and at the time there was, I think, 274,000 elephants or something like that. And within 12 years, that population had declined by 90% from poaching.
And I could tell you the reason.
I would love to.
Because exactly what you said. Once you take hunting away and it doesn't have that kind of value,
Yes.
who else is going to provide the money? You just heard me say that we have some guys paying them $1.3 million to hunt a sheep.
Yeah.
Right? So the black rhinos are in trouble. Not the white so much. The black rhinos are in trouble. And they're in trouble because of poaching, right? The animal gets killed, they lop off the horn. Goes to Asia. And they're unbelievably valuable. I don't know how many times more valuable the weight of a rhino horn is than gold. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievably valuable. So that's gonna make it so you got some bad people that are in it for the money and they're gonna poach them. So yes, when you stop hunting elephant, rhinos pretty much stopped. What it does is now you're relying on government and government money, and there just isn't enough of it to pay all the people that you need to pay or have to try to protect those animals. So generally once you stop hunting in an area, a lot of times populations will plunge because now here comes the poachers. And there's just not enough money to go around to. Now Africa does a really good job of trying to stop the poachers, right? They're using all kinds of electronics these days and drones and all kinds, and they're trying to do their best. But I was just in Plonsburg and I forget, and here we were talking about Kruger Park, and I forget how many rhinos they were up to that have just been killed just this year from poaching. So unfortunately, a lot of people will equate poaching with hunting. They're totally two different things. And the analogy I like to give is, if I walk into a bank, I go to the ATM and I take out $200, well, that's my money that I just took out. I go in with a gun, pointed at the teller, and I say, give me $200 or give me all your money, and I walk out with money.
Right.
In both scenarios, you walked out with money, right? But they're not the same, right? One is stealing, which is poaching, and the other one isn't, right? So.
And if you hunt, you can't keep ivory, right?
No, there's a big controversy now in Africa as to whether or not they have a lot of ivory, right? Because, if they catch a poacher with a bunch of ivory, they confiscate it, obviously, throw the guy in jail. Or a lot of them, if they die of natural causes, elephant, for example, they're going to take the tusk and they're going to take it. So they don't sell it. So the controversy is, well, maybe we should sell it. Maybe that will decrease the price. It's kind of like marijuana. If everybody's growing marijuana, you legalize it, maybe that'll lower the price and it won't be so valuable to people that are doing it for the wrong reason. So that hasn't happened yet, but if you talk to people there, they're willing to be honest. You talk to a park ranger, for example, in Kruger Park, he'll tell you there's way too many elephant in there and they need to be culled. Nobody else wants the elephant, right? Because they're extremely destructive. But the anti-lobby is extremely powerful and they've stopped that. But what I said was us being at the top of the food chain and being responsible to manage things underneath. They're going to eat that park. They're just going to destroy that park. There's elephant. There's other animals that rely on that, on that park to feed themselves and to exist in. Well, if you allow the elephant to destroy everything, that affects everything in the chain below them. So to me, it's all about sound wildlife management. That's conservation, and that's what I think hunters are about. We're willing to pay a lot of money to do what we do. We're willing to pay the tag fees and so on. We know it goes to a good cause.
I think there's a few things I want to touch on, the anti-lobbyist, and then also know it goes to a good cause. A lot of times when I'm trying to explain, actually in college I wrote a paper on why hunting is necessary for conservation. I think I got a C on it just out of, I prepared really well for it, but I just think they didn't want to hear it.
Disagree with it?
Yeah. But the common question I hear is, well, how do you know where your money's going? Do you track it? Like, do you ask where it goes, or are you trusting? I think it's dependent on where.
Well, all I know is if you talk to an anti-hunter and ask them how much money they put into wildlife, and you ask me to track everything that I paid for tags and licenses and points over the years, they would not even come close to what I paid into wildlife. So I just see it from what I've done. You multiply me by thousands and thousands of hunters that are putting in putting in all that money. Well, it's got to go somewhere. And then I see, with these different conservation groups like the Pope and Young Club and Wild Sheep Foundation. So the Wild Sheep Foundation, they have a convention every year, and they take in millions and millions of dollars from raffles for hunts and also auctioning off different hunts. And all that money goes into their conservation fund. And what they'll do is they'll send money to wildlife, state wildlife fish agencies, fish and game. They'll say, we're going to send you $1 million. This is for the sheep, the bighorn sheep in unit 5 where we hear that there's a big issue with disease. We're going to give you $1 million to try to help those sheep out. So they do that in lots of different areas all across the country. So there's a tremendous amount of money raised also through raffles and through conventions that go right back into conservation. Look, we want the animals around, right? We don't want to see them go away. I want my grandchildren to enjoy them. We want other people to enjoy them. But it should be pretty obvious that we got to take care of them. We got to manage them, right? So you often hear, well, let nature take its course. Well, that statement just says that human beings are not involved, they're not part of nature. Human beings are part of nature, right? And so I'd like to see how many people would like the mountain lion back in Bernathen or the grizzly bear, or, it just doesn't work, right? So there's going to be conflicts between human beings and animals because we're here, because we are part of nature. So if we don't take the responsibility, we don't do something about the elephants in Kruger Park, what are those other animals going to eat?
Right. Who are the anti-lobbyists that you mentioned?
I can't remember the name of some of these anti-groups. I mean, I was so into it when I was younger. When I was a president of the United Boners of Pennsylvania. I was in battles quite a bit with anti-hunting groups. I can't remember. What's the big animal rights group?
Start with P.
PETA.
PETA, yeah.
PETA's a big animal rights group, and
and I think more of my question is, a lot of Western perspectives are stop hunting, but if you go to the local communities, like where you've been hunting throughout Africa, is the common collective answer, we need you guys to come here because your funds put a value on the animal, which provides us a means to spend our time doing anti-poaching. And like anti-lobbyists might be not considering that as a perspective.
I don't think that they think of that as a perspective. I'll give you another example. Mountain lion hunting was stopped in California a long time ago. I don't know how many years ago, quite a while ago. Now I'm just thinking off the top of my head, right? So my numbers might be off, but I'm going to make a point. So what they did in California, they put it up for a vote. So everybody got to vote on whether or not we're going to stop mountain lion hunting. To me, it should be up to the wildlife biologists to figure out how many mountain lions there should be in certain areas of California. They take into consideration human populations and the farmers that want to raise cattle and sheep and whatnot. They factor all of those kinds of things in. Well, people that go and vote, a lot of people are only going to factor in their emotion. They're a beautiful animal. We don't want them killed. Well, I say then you don't want them managed. You don't want them managed, then you just took it out of the hands of the wildlife people and the biologists. Things are probably going to go haywire. So there was about 60, as I recall, when they stopped mountain lion hunting in California. There was about 60 mountain lions harvested by hunting every year, removed by hunting every year, and then they stopped it. Well, of course, the mountain lion population took off and grew and grew and grew, right? So now you have people that are now the conflict between human beings and what human beings like their dogs and cats. Those kind of conflicts went way up. So mountain lions started grabbing dogs and cats. There's an example of a woman that was killed. She had a couple small children. And what happens when there's those kinds of conflicts, generally those lions become nuisance lions or lions that have to be killed, have to be put down. So now now the wildlife agency, instead of having hunters pay in to hunt that
Right.
species. Now that Fish and Game has to go out and they have to pay somebody to track it down with dogs and kill that nuisance or problem mountain lion. So that mountain lion that I'm talking about that killed the woman was a female, and she had kittens. The mountain lion was killed. And the kittens were taken, and I don't know if they went to I don't know where they went, the zoo, whatever, or they just raised them and let them go. I don't know what happened from there. But I do know that the animal rights groups raised an awful lot of money for those kittens for their benefit. But it was the hunters that raised money for the two little children that didn't have a mother. So I do think that they can get their priorities wrong, a little bit mixed up. You know, it's almost that, you know, animals are people too. Well, they're not people. But they deserve our respect, and they deserve to be treated well. So, to make a long story short, the number of mountain lions killed, which was 60, is way up in the hundreds now, all because they took hunting away. Well, now you have a lot of nuisance mountain lions, Fish and Game paying guys to go and kill the nuisance mountain lions so they can decrease the conflicts between human beings and mountain lions. So what they try to stop, which is the killing of mountain lions, they only made more killed. And they're now killed in a different way. But they don't add that up, they don't figure that in.
You're right.
Right? It's easy to say, no, I don't want the mountain lion killed. It's easy to say, no, I don't want elephants killed in Kruger Park. It's easy to say that. But when you dig into it, it's necessary for their management so that the elephant can survive. What happens when they run out of food in that park? What happens to the elephant? So, like I said, we talked about it in the beginning, we're at the top of the food chain. We have a responsibility to manage what's underneath, to conserve them.
I want to get into your story a bit, and my first question kind of for you is, do you remember your first hunt?
I do, and I didn't get anything. On my very first hunt, I was invited to go hunting my father didn't hunt, my uncles didn't hunt. I was 16 years old, I think, and I got invited to go on a hunt in the Poconos on the regular deer season in Pennsylvania with a classmate of mine and his father. And just being in the woods and just seeing deer at the time, it's a whole different ball game when part of the goal is to take a life. When you're just walking in the woods and you see deer, oh, there's a deer, there's a nice deer. Aren't they beautiful? But it's different when you're hunting, right? And you know that part of why you're there is to take a life for whatever reason, conservation for the meat, whatever. It's just different. It's almost indescribable to someone that doesn't experience it. That was my first hunt, and from there I was hooked. And I took a course in college, an archery course in college. So I would have been about 19 years old, I guess. Took that archery course and really loved the bow and arrow. And there were some people in town that were bow hunting, and I just got hooked up with them. So that's how I got into the bow hunting part of it. But that was my first hunt. My first hunt away, I think, was a bear hunt, black bear hunt in Maine. Actually, I don't think I got one on that trip either. I did go back another year and I think got one.
How old were you at that time?
I was in my early 20s. I was probably 22ish at that time. And then it was antelope, and then it was caribou, and then it just kind of went from there. You want the different experiences if you can. So, there's 5 different species of caribou as an example, and you're in different areas and different terrains. It's a little bit different experience. So it's nice to be able to experience the different species. So you're not just hooked into just deer or just this or that animal.
Did you decide to kind of work your way up? So it was like you started off at deer, and then you go to bear.
Yeah, because the stakes get higher. And they get higher because, a lot because of the money that's involved with it. So obviously if you're traveling to Alaska and you're gonna hunt something in Alaska, let's say it's an Alaska moose, you have a lot more invested in it. And that also can add to the pressure. So the more you put in, whether it's time, energy, or whatever, it adds to the pressure. So maybe one pressure is you're at the free throw line and you need to make the free throw shot versus the 3-point shot. It just adds to it, and so you start off with the animals that don't quite cost as much, and then you maybe work your way up to the other ones. And you're just not ready when you first started. Somebody that got their first deer with a bow and arrow, there's no way they're ready to go hunt a moose.
Yep.
Right?
Big step up.
Or a grizzly bear or something like that. You have to kind of earn your stripes with it and take it slow.
The caribou, you have all 5?
I do. So if you notice, there's a space in the wall, right?
Yes.
Well, that caribou's down in the basement because in order for me to move things around in here, it's a production. So all the furniture has to come out, scaffolding has to come in. I have to get some friends over here to get all the way up there, to take those animals down, right, to get it up into that space. But all through the years, I always left a space for my goal. So my goal was to get all 5 caribou. I always left a space in the wall to remind me, okay, Maddock, don't forget, you're trying to get all 5 of the caribou. So that space in the wall always reminded me it's empty space, so you need to fill it.
Yep.
So you need to keep those goals in mind. So you start at the top, that's the Quebec Labrador, the one below it in velvet. That's the Central Barren Ground Canadian moose, and the one to the right of that is only found in Newfoundland. That's the woodland caribou. And the one to the right is a mountain caribou. You get those in British Columbia or the Northwest Territories. So the one I got, the last one I needed, I got about 5 years ago, and that is in the basement because I have other animals coming, and you don't want to move things around all the time and bring a scaffolding in here every time you want to move an animal. So you notice up here on the wall, there's a space.
Oh yeah, big
as
space.
well, right? So I have that desert sheep, doll sheep, and then the bighorn sheep that I got in Wyoming is over there in the corner on the floor. Well, that's waiting to go up into that space.
You have to bring a crane to get that thing up there?
No, you got to get ropes and things, and you have to get, you get 2 guys up on the scaffolding and a couple guys below, and you just, you secure it real well, and you start hoisting it up onto the scaffolding, and then you got to line things up so you get the holes right in the wall and whatnot. So this room was built as what it is, right? So we had 3/4 inch plywood all around, so I don't have to find a stud. I can move these things around wherever I need to try to move them.
So you built this room specifically to be, you call it the great room?
Yeah, and luckily my wife was really good about it and has been great about my hunting. I'm very grateful for her. I mean, I missed anniversaries, I've missed Christmas, and I was here for Christmas, but I might have left Christmas night, that kind of thing. Because I was a school teacher, my time was limited as to when I could go. And she was always great about it, and she's been great about this room. And she actually designed a lot of it, and she went to a convention, Safari Club International convention with me, just to talk to people about rooms like this and how to do it. So luckily she's good with all this.
She supports your hunting.
Very. She's been extremely supportive. She knows what I love to do, and she's been unbelievably supportive. So it's kind of been a team thing. She's going to go on this moose hunt with me. She hasn't been on many hunts. She's been to Africa a number of times, but she wants to go and just come on the hunt with me, and hopefully she'll get me you'll get to see some moose. And now I'm not just going to get any old moose, because I've got, as one of my goals, I wanted to get all 3 moose species. Right?
See, you got 2 up there.
There's 2 there, the Alaska Yukon moose, and then what's the Shiras moose. The Shiras moose is from the western states, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah. They have Shiras moose there. It's the smallest moose species. And then the biggest moose species is the Alaska Yukon moose. Now that's not a very big Alaska Yukon moose. That's one on the smaller side, but it goes back to what I talked about before. Right, if I was a rifle hunter, I could afford to probably not come home so many times without an animal.
Right, yeah.
Right, so I went 6 times for my mountain goat, for example, 8 times for mountain lion. Right, so it's not just go and kill. You're going to get what you go for. As a bow hunter, you accept that your odds, your chances of coming back with nothing are much higher than they are with someone that chooses to hunt with a rifle. So I did get a Canadian moose. That's the 3rd species. So we have Shiras, Alaska Yukon moose, and Canadian moose. And I did get a Canadian moose many years ago, probably 30 years ago, 35 years ago in Maine. I drew a tag. They didn't have a point system at that time, and I got lucky and drew the tag. Well, the principal it was a 6-day season. I can only get the principal to let me go for miss 2 days of school. So you know how hard this tag is to get? It's incredibly difficult to get. It's only a 6-day season. Well, I can only get 2 days off. So I think I left on a Wednesday night. I hunted Thursday, Friday, and the last day was Saturday. And I did get a moose on that Saturday, but it wasn't a very big moose. It wasn't a moose that I would say that was worthy to go up on the wall. So I had the horns, and they're actually out in my shop. They're on a plaque. So always in the back of my mind, I wanted to try to represent all 3 species of moose. So here you have the 5 species of deer.
Could you go through those?
So you have on the left, you have a mule deer. Going on the top is a whitetail from Alberta, which tend to grow big whitetails, so that's why that's a good one. And then to the right, the one that's in velvet, that's a Sitka blacktail from Kodiak Island in Alaska. And then the one up top is from California, that's a Colombian blacktail. And the one to the right is the smallest of the deer species. They're about half the size of our deer, and that's a Coues or Cow's deer. Some people pronounce it C-O-U-S-E, Cow's deer. So those are the 5 species. So I've got the 5 caribou, I've got the 5 deer species, I've got all 3 moose. But what I was getting to was, I always wanted to get a Canadian so I could have it represented up there, and I knew I wanted to go back and try to get a Canadian. So I booked a hunt 5 years ago with a guy from Alberta that had a very high success rate with bow hunters. But he only gets 4 tags, but he was pretty much 100% with his bow hunters. So I booked a hunt with him, and he had a 5-year waiting list. So I got through the 5 years, and I went last year, and I did get a good Canadian moose on the first day of the hunt. And then here, lo and behold, I draw a Maine moose tag the very next year, so maybe I'll get 2 good Canadians. But what I was going to get to, it needs to be a pretty good Canadian moose. I don't need to have the species represented. So it's a good chance I'll come home with no moose, but I may pass up some smaller moose, whereas if I didn't have one, I would probably be less selective.
Just curious, the meat on a moose, how long does that last your family?
Well, it lasts a long time. It's just, they're the size of a cow, so I mean, it lasts you, I don't know, a year and a half, easily. So if I bring it home, I will give a lot of it away. I'll maybe keep a quarter of it. The rest I'll give away to people in the town. I'm already having people bug me. Oh, bring me some moose meat. So we'll see how it. We'll see how that goes. But Maine's another example. They monitor those moose in a big way. They're a tremendous resource of income for them. They're going to want them conserved. They're not going to want to wipe them out.
You are pretty involved with, I've heard from Dr. Farrar, I hunt with Dr. Farrar, so that's kind of how I got to meet you. You're good hunting buddies with him. And he was mentioning that you're an incredible grandfather and father, that you built a go-kart track in your backyard for your grandkids, and that for your son Chris, you've helped him out, get out in the woods. And I would just love for you to expand on the work you've done with helping disabled or handicapped and veterans get out in the woods.
Well, that's another big part of what hunters do. I mean, there's lots and lots of programs where, like, if you go to these conventions or auctions, now I'm on these auctions quite a bit just to see what's going on. There's online hunting auctions. So a lot of organizations have these auctions that you can go online and participate in all across the country. And usually that season where there's a lot of auctions going on is, when the hunting seasons are over. So January, February, March, April is when these auctions happen. And there's a lot of them that says this is going to benefit disabled veterans. Or this hunt, you have to be a disabled veteran to even bid on this hunt, right? Or there's lots of programs. There's a program in Pennsylvania for disabled hunters, United Boners of Pennsylvania Disabled Hunter Program, and all the money that they raise is so that they can take. Usually, it can be adults, but often it's disabled children. And then there's children that they're into hunting, or their parents are into hunting, and their wish is to go and get a certain animal. So and they're terminal. They have got cancer. So there's programs for those people that it's their big goal is to go get a moose or go get an elk. So there's lots and lots of outfitters that will give their time and energy so that those people can go and enjoy the hunt. Those kinds of things are going. Lots and lots of organizations that are involved with that. I think just about every hunting organization, in one way or the other, supports those kinds of programs. And then there's a tremendous amount of meat that's given away. So here in this area, since we've got such a high population of deer, they give out a lot of tags for female deer. So the way to reduce the population is to harvest the females. Because when you remove a female, you're removing generations of deer. When you harvest a male, you're removing one male. So the way you monitor populations to keep them in balance, to manage them, part of the strategy is female. So even in Pennsylvania for elk, for example, in certain units they'll give out a certain number of female elk cow tags, cow elk tags, in order to get the population exactly. So it's all scientifically managed. They do surveys, have a good idea of the population within an area. And so they'll give out tags depending on these human conflicts. And if the populations are getting too high, they're going to increase the number of female tags that are given out. So what I was getting to was there's a tremendous amount of meat. In Pennsylvania, the program is called Hunters Sharing the Harvest. So I can drop off a meat at a butcher or processor and say, this is for the Hunters Sharing the Harvest program. He'll process that deer, and then he'll give it to a charity. It's usually something affiliated with a church or something where people need, they need the meat. So that hunter gets paid by the Game Commission. So hunters can donate when they buy a license. They can check off a box in a lot of different states. Yes, I want to donate to the Sharing the Harvest program. That money goes to the processing of that animal for people that need it.
That's incredible. So that kind of leads me to this wall with all the whitetail, and you founded Whitetail Associates, and I'm just kind of curious. I was doing a little bit of background research, so I just typed up your name, and I saw that you led one of the record-setting harvest I don't even know what to call it, the upper Makefield deer reduction. Could you tell us that?
Yeah, so I was a co-founder. There was three of us that founded the Bernathen Marksmen Association here in Bernathen. What happened was there was a large landowner here that got fed up with the deer. And this guy's quite a conservationist. I mean, he's known for conservation. So he recognized that the population was too high. Now in Bernathen, it was always, you didn't even bother asking anybody to hunt. There was no hunting.
You said there's no hunting.
There was no hunting. I mean, it was legal to hunt, but nobody would give you permission to hunt. Right.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. So what happened in, this is about 1985 or 4 or something, 83, that this landowner from Bernathen had a hunt. And he didn't know any hunters. So he called a guy that he knew in Maryland, and he came up. Well, at the time, the Game Commission was way too stingy with their female doe tags. Way back, you can only get one. Now you can get.
It's up to 6, I think.
Now it's 15. They just changed it to 15.
This year.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, you can get 15. So, anyway, what happened was it was a disaster. It was done completely wrong. So you don't keep a hunt a secret. You let the community know what's going on, because if you don't let them know what's going on, they get to make up things, right? They're going to have these perceptions of things that are going on that are not true. It's much better to have town meetings. So when this hunt happened, everybody came unglued because it was a gun hunt. So all the guns are going off. Imagine a bunch of guns going off over there in Bernathen, and a bunch of deer getting killed. The police don't know anything. The community doesn't know anything. Imagine what a mess it was. It was a mess. So after that landowner said, "No, that's it. I'm done. I'm never doing this again." Yet everybody mad at him. Community was mad, police were mad, and the hunters were mad. You're going to bring guys from Maryland in here? Everybody was mad, right? So from that, we learned that no, that's not the way you do it. So, and everybody wants to be sure that you're bringing in hunters that are responsible and know what they're doing, right? So we developed the whole program with having hunters fill out an application, then it's like applying for a job, an interview. What's your experiences been? What organizations do you belong to? Because I'm a big believer that if they're a giver, givers and takers in this world, right? So the givers are going to be people that are involved with these hunting organizations that are also involved with the disabled veterans and hunters sharing the harvest and these kinds of things. So these groups are important for a lot of people, whether it's feeding them or conservation or disabled vets or Make-A-Wish Foundation or whatever. So we like those guys. So that's a part of the application process. What organizations have you belonged to? And then they have to take a proficiency test. If it's bow and arrow, they gotta, there's a test that they have to take to make sure that they're proficient. So, and then we have meetings. You put it in the newspaper. We're gonna have this hunt. You wanna learn about it? Come, this date, it's gonna be here. And you make sure that you talk to the chief of police. Hey chief, what do you need us to do? Often they will give us year, make, and model of their vehicle, give us all this information so that we see a vehicle parked on the side of the road. Okay, it's one of your guys. We have plaques that go onto the dashboard. It's managed, right, as opposed to just a free-for-all. Because people don't want free-for-alls, right? They want to see that it's done right. So we made a proposal to that landowner and to the Pennypack. It was the Pennypack watershed at the time. Now it's the Pennypack Trust. Made a proposal for that. And they bought into it. They bought into the, we formed the Bernathen Marksmen Association, did all that, right? Mm-hmm. Visited with the police, did the community meetings, did all of that. And they said, said, yeah, we want to do this. So that's how that happened. And yeah, we did get sued right before we were going to start the hunt, maybe a few days before the hunt was going to start. We got sued. So they went to a couple people in the area. They weren't from Bernathen, but they were close to Bernathen. They sued us, and they got, actually one person was from Bernathen, so they got a court injunction, or they tried. So I remember it was Jody Maddock and Greg Odner were in the judge's chambers, and he's going to decide whether or not he's going to stop this hunt. And so the lawyers made their spiel about this is unsafe and that's unsafe and so on. Well, that's the card that anti-hunters like to play. They don't like to say, well, I'm an anti-hunter, I'm against killing. What they'll say is this is unsafe. How can you do this? It's unsafe. So you explain to the judge, look, we're up in tree stands. All the shots are going down into the mud, into the dirt. Nobody's hunting horizontally. Everybody's tested. You bring up the fact that there's an awful lot of road kills in this area. You want to talk about safety? Okay, we'll talk about safety. What these deer are doing and why the population needs to be controlled. And so the lawyers went through their spiel, and it's just Greg Odner and I'm in my early 20s. Greg's maybe, I don't know, 26 or so, I don't know. So I showed him a booklet I had from the house next door where I used to live. And I showed him what these deer were doing. I must have had 20 deer around my house at that time, and they were just eating all my shrubs. So I said, listen, I don't know where these lawyers live. They don't live here, Judge. This is where I live. Take a look at what these deer, the damage that these deer are doing. And it was great because the judge had a pipe in his mouth. He sat back and he said, you know what? My wife and I were driving down Turwood Road a couple nights ago, and I darn near hit a deer. Injunction denied.
Wow.
So,
That's incredible.
but those are the kind of battles that you have to fight sometime, because there's just, I just call it a lack of common sense. There's too many deer here. It's unhealthy to have too many deer. They need to be managed, right? But because emotion gets in the way, and we understand it because they're a beautiful animal, we get it, right? But you got to look at the bigger picture. So from that there was a lot of success with that organization. Bernathen Marksmen's Association, there was a lot of articles written about it. I wrote an article for Bowhunter magazine, and it sort of took off, meaning there was no managed hunting in the suburbs with archery managed groups like we put together with BAM. So my phone started to ring like crazy, and at that time Lyme disease was taking off, and so people were perked up to that fact. So the Bernathen Marksmen's Association, to this day, our focus and our mission is to manage the deer here, right? So we don't spread out and do other places. But I needed to spread out because there was people that needed that kind of help, right? So I started Whitetail Associates as another organization, and then from there, the mission wasn't the watershed deer or the trust deer. It was, I could go anywhere that I wanted to and try to help set up these kinds of programs. So I set up that one in Upper Makefield, and yeah, we did, the archers there did, a lot of people think you can't manage deer with a bow and arrow. You can manage them, and you can reduce the population. So I did my spiels at their township meetings in Upper Makefield Township, and a lot of people bought in. And so my goal was, you don't want lots and lots of hunters because they become unmanageable. It's manageable if you can get a lot of tags. You don't need a lot of hunters. So we needed to be careful with the hunters that we brought in. As I said, they needed to go through a process. And as an example, I probably interviewed 300 archers. There was 300 or 400 people, archers, that wanted to be involved. I only took 30. So out of that 300, we only took 30 that we felt would make the program. And so, now there's just a tremendous amount of work after that. So now we have to, somebody has to go and visit and sit down with all those property owners, and there's a list of things that I form that I create, and so you have to ask them, one, is it okay if I hunt on your property? So they're either gonna say yes or no. So if they say no, you say, well, if I hunt over at your neighbor's and a deer runs over onto this property after it gets shot and I need to track it over, can I come and track it? Right, they're either gonna say yes or no. If they say no, I know what I have to do. I have to contact the game commission if a deer happens to run on their property. Right, and do you want us to call you before we come and hunt? If we're tracking a deer, do you want us to call you before we come and track? Now you magnify that by 50 to 100 property owners. It takes a tremendous amount of legwork to gather all that information so that you know what you can do and what you can't do within that township. So to make a long story short, there was only, I don't know how many deer were harvested in that township.
I wrote it down. 33 certified archers harvested 443 deer, but there was additional archers for a total of 568.
Yeah, so you must have got that from Phil. So I wrote up a whole thing. I can go upstairs and grab it, but that's about right. We had very few number that were in my group, but what we had the luxury of was unlimited tags. So a hunter can have as many tags as you want. You go buy 100 of them. So you can manage deer with fewer people because you can get as many tags as you want to harvest female deer. So I had incentives in there, right? I had incentives within the program. I had a point system for those 30 or 33 guys. And the focus has to be female deer. You're trying to reduce the deer population, right? But hunters like to harvest animals because it's much more of a challenge with bigger antlers because they're a smart guy, right? I liken it to, there's a smart old bass, right? And you're trying to catch this bass. And you've been trying to catch him for a year or two. And you try different lures and different situations and different this and different that. You just can't catch that darn thing. Because he's smart. He's tough to get. Right? So one day you get him. Right? You're finally pulling that 10-pound bass. And you say, holy cow, I've got that 10-pound bass, right?
Yep.
Well, I want to remember the effort that it took me to get that bass. I'm going to take it to the taxidermist and I'm going to have a replica made or whatever. That's what I liken this to. So you worked hard for it. It means something to you. If you don't do that, and just looking at a picture doesn't cut it the way, because I have people say to me all the time, well, just go take a picture of these animals. I said, look, I want to participate in nature. I don't want to just observe. You want to observe? I'm fine with that. But I want to participate. So that's how, anyway, so hunters, so I had to give them incentive, but I had to make sure that enough female deer were harvested. I could not just open it up like it was here on that very first hunt here in Bernathen. There was almost all bucks killed, all antlered deer. It was only like 2 female deer killed, like 20 some antlered, only 2 female. Well, that does nothing to the population, right? So I had a point system, and I said, and the point system went something like this. If you removed a button buck, well, that's a male, but it's easy to make a mistake on a button buck for a doe. But if only a button buck is in there, it is a deer. It is reducing the population, but you're still targeting females. So they were worth a half a point, and the female deer were worth 1 point. And what I said was, you're not allowed to harvest an antlered deer until you earn 10 points. So that meant you had to either harvest 10 female deer
Or 20 button bucks.
or 20 button bucks or some combination of the two. So that's how we got the numbers up. So yeah, those 33 archers, we knocked the socks off of what the harvest was the year before. It was probably less than 100.
Yeah, I think it was
Those-
148 or
So
something.
those bow hunters took it all the way to over 400. And then I had a system which was the hunter cooperative piece of this. What I don't do is I don't go and push hunters off of properties that they've got. I think it's unethical for me to do that. So I'm not doing it. So if we knock on the door and the landowner says, I already got these guys. I really like you guys. I like what you're doing. I see you're testing guys. You got this interview process. I really want you on our property. I always say, no, we're not going to do that. But I'd like to talk to your hunters. So I would talk to those hunters that were not in my program that had permission to hunt different properties, and I would say, listen, we're trying our best to help this township reduce the deer numbers. Will you help us? So they helped us. They turned in their deer. I said, look, I need you guys to harvest more female deer. Help us out. And they did. They did a good job. So that's how we got those numbers up into the 500s. That was all deer added in from the cooperative, from the hunter cooperative. So it's just a big program. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. I won't do it again. I've done a number of them. I did one more recently in Mount Lebanon. I think the harvest the year before we did it was six in the entire township. And those houses are stacked together. They're like quarter-acre properties. The deer walking on the sidewalks and stuff. And I interviewed 100 guys and took 10. And those 10 guys got about 100 deer. We took them from 6 to 100. People don't think you can do it with bow and arrow. That was all with bow and arrow. So that's kind of my thing, right? I've run these hunts. I've written articles about it, and but I don't want to do another one. They're just
It's a lot of work.
It's just a tremendous one. And I was there to prove something. I needed to prove that bow hunters can do it, and I need to prove that all the things that the antis were saying about us was not true. You love going to the meetings. Oh, my cat's going to get shot. My dog's going to get shot. You know, there's going to be a lot of wounding.
Nothing.
There wasn't anything like that. So part of what I like to do is to show them at the end. I'll keep records of anything that got wounded, or I'll do a survey to the property owners. Did any of your cats get shot? Any of your dogs get shot? Did you see any wounded deer? Did you see any deer running around with arrows in them? Do a big survey at the end, and the issues are absolutely minuscule. Nothing like what. Yet they'll also try to blame you for anything. And I say to them, I go in to a township meeting and let's say we've had permission, it's going to happen, the hunt's going to happen, and I always say, you ever see any road kills around here? Any deer dead on the side of the road? Oh yeah, we've seen that. I said, well now you know we're going to run a hunting program here. Every one of those deer that are on the side of the road is going to be us. The antis are going to say that we killed that deer. So you have to work out a good relationship with the police and say, will you please totally check that deer out and keep a record of it so we can prove it wasn't from an arrow, it got hit by a car. So all those things you have to put in place. But a big thing for me always was, and the reason why I worked so hard was to prove those people wrong, because they were wrong. It was a lie. What they're saying was a lie.
And you were doing a greater good in the end of reducing potential car crashes.
Oh, they loved it. So I would keep track of the car, and always the deer car collisions came way down. You show a graph of what happens with the deer car collisions. You know, it's all good. There's all good things that come out of it. What I can't do is get in people's heads and get into their emotion and fix the fact that these deer really need to be removed. Yeah, they're pretty and all that, but they're unsafe. So I have issues with schools as well, right? Oh, you can't hunt near a school. And there's laws about hunting. You can hunt, I think, 150 yards from the property of a school, and they always bring up the safety thing. And I always bring up, I said, do your own research. Go and look and find in Pennsylvania how many people were shot with an arrow, and how many people were killed or injured in a deer car collision. You want safety, the deer numbers have to come down. It's not, there's no comparison. You want safety, the deer numbers have to come down. So they make my point. I'm always glad that they raise it, because I got the facts. The facts are that many more people are injured, killed, hurt in deer cart collisions than any kind of a bow hunting incident.
Yeah, the website said road kill, like, accidents dropped by 44%.
When we did that,
insane.
when we did that hunt there.
Yeah.
So think of all the money that's saved. I mean, every time there's a deer car collision, that car is going to the body shop, right?
And maybe the person in the hospital.
Probably thousands of dollars in damage. Now, I gotta say, most people are for it. They're 100% for it, right? It's usually about 10% that are dead set against it. They'll do whatever they can to stop it. But generally, it's 80 to 90%, or they realize, yeah, we gotta do this.
You were involved in the Bernathen College Deer Study Program. Is that true?
Not really. I mean, yes and no. The only thing that I did was, I got a little bit of a reputation with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. They knew me. They knew the programs that I was running. They were much in favor of what I was doing. And so I got to know them, and I was involved with politics back in the 80s, because back then there was no hunting in November. You couldn't bow hunt at all in November. Archery season ended in the end of October, and it picked up again after Christmas. Well, the best time to hunt is November, and we couldn't hunt.
It's the rut.
That's the deer rut. That's the funnest time to be out. That's when, and people notice it here. You gotta be careful. All of a sudden, there's deer on my backyard. They're under the swing set. They're all over the place. That happens in late October into November. We couldn't hunt at that time. And so I was president of the United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania at the time, and we put a big effort. Well, anyway, I knew a couple of the commissioners, 8 commissioners that pretty much call the shots in Pennsylvania. And it's a board of commissioners named by the governor. And I got to know a couple of the commissioners extremely well from that effort and their effort to help us get a bow season in November. So what I'm getting to is I had some connections. And the college had some difficulty one time. I think they got denied their permit to collar deer for their study. And they came to me and they said, is there anything you can do? So I did make a call, and I said, look, this is what the college is trying to do. It's an important program for them. It's this and that. Well, they got the permit. I don't know if it's from my phone call or not, but they think it was, right? And maybe it was, because all of a sudden, after I had talked to some of the biologists, they got the permit. So that's maybe how I helped them with that.
I'm a recent hunter, and I did not know that you were not allowed to hunt in November, but
Well, you can thank me for that.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Well, you're not, that's really unfair, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of help. I had help from those 2 commissioners that did a phenomenal job. And I had a lot of the United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania, county representatives and whatnot. And we had a biologist that stepped up, Frank Rice, that was absolutely phenomenal, that would step up to the game commission. But we had a lot of people against it. The gun hunters were against us. How dare you want to get into and hunt bucks before we get a chance to hunt them, right? It was a big lobbying effort from other hunting groups to stop us. We really put together a great program. I bust people, and I had people being bussed in from the day of the vote. I was bussing them in from as far as Pittsburgh. We packed that building. There was standing room only. There was people out in the parking lot, and they got it. They voted it in. So, but it was a big effort to get that done. So, that's why I always tell people, you need to join the United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania. This is what they've done for you. They've been instrumental. They were instrumental in that getting the hunt the rut in November. And they were instrumental in the archery tag for elk. They were instrumental. There was no archery bear hunting. Now there is archery bear hunting. So one of the things I force people to do, if they're going to be involved with any organization that I'm involved with. Bernathen Marksman Association or Whitetail Associates, part of the requirement is you must be a member of the United Bowhunters of Pennsylvania. Why would, for 15 or 20 bucks, why wouldn't we support the organization that's trying to protect and promote bow hunting? So we force the issue. It's the right thing to do to help those kinds of groups.
I'm gonna have to join my only got one. It was a buck, but it was during the rut, so thank you.
Was it grunting? Was it chasing anything?
Oh yeah, it came out. It was
A lot of fun, right?
So much.
I can imagine not being able to hunt that fun time.
Yeah.
And we could.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful for the person who introduced me to hunting. So it's just once you get that first one, it's just like the adrenaline's in. The past, Darren Pickard, he's your nephew. Yeah, him and I are good buddies, and we go out. And last year he got a doe, and I helped him out with it. And just it's a bonding experience. It's so fun to be out in the woods. I was even going to ask you, what defines a successful hunt for you? Is it the actual final goal of you got the animal, or is it the side experiences of just being out in nature?
That's difficult. I mean, there's no question you're disappointed.
Yes, yeah.
If you don't get one, because that's the goal. You have to put things in perspective. I put myself in that position, right? I understand that I may not come back with something. So, but you learn something on every one of those hunts that you go on, whether you come back with something or not. And you're in some of the most beautiful areas. So I've been some places that were absolutely stunning. Newfoundland for the red stag, which is there. British Columbia for the goats. I drew a tag in Utah on points for one of the goats. British Columbia, Alaska. I mean, I've been in some of the most beautiful places around because of my pursuit of hunting, and I'm grateful for that. So you have to kind of take it the way it is. I mean, if you ask the Eagles when they didn't win the Super Bowl, what was it, 2 years ago, and they lost to Kansas City. If you ask them, they're all going to say, yeah, we were really disappointed, but they had made it there. They had done their thing. They had given it their best effort. So you have to take that a little bit with a grain of salt. You're going to be disappointed, but it made them work that much harder and come back the next time and win the Super Bowl. So I kind of relate a lot of the thoughts and feelings to athletics. So yeah, you're going to be disappointed, but it's you accept the disappointment. Where the real disappointment is when you wound something. That's terrible, right? So that's why you really work hard to see that possibility is extremely low, right? But it's going to happen. You can't pick up a bow and arrow and challenge yourself with a bow and arrow. I mean, if I just wanted to kill something, I'd use a grenade, right? I just throw it into a bunch of deer and I wipe them out. But that's just not the way it is. That's not the experience.
Could be the new strategy.
That's not the experience that you want. But wounding is going to take place, and it's a part of it. So you learn from every one of those experiences. And over the years, I've gotten to be a pretty darn good tracker because I've been on so many tracking with my deer or my animals or somebody else's. Somebody shoots something and I might be laying 100 yards, but if it doesn't leave a blood trail, there's a good chance that a novice is not going to find it. So as you learn more about it and you've been on those kinds of tracks, you seem to just get another sense of what that animal, where that animal wants to go.
Yeah,
and you get better and better at it. But so as far as disappointment goes, there's nothing like wounding an animal and having an issue that way. That is the most disappointing aspect of hunting, no question about it.
Yeah, the past 3 seasons, I 2 or 3 seasons I haven't got one, but each season I picked up Scent was a big one my first year. There was no deer coming by me. Then I was like, all right, baking soda, leave my clothes outside. Then they'd be near me. Then I realized I was so cold because I had 15 layers on that I had no blood circulation, and it was the less is better, and you just kept learning.
The biggest thing you learn is the wind. You can't buck the wind, right? So if you think a deer coming from this direction, and the wind is going in that direction, you might as well not even try. I don't care how much baking soda you use or they spray things. If the wind's going to the deer, they're going to bust you. So I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of places that I can hunt. I must have 40 or 50 tree stands up between Bernathen and Bucks County and Chester County. I have a lot of places that I can go, and a lot of those spots don't get hunted in a year, even though they're ready to hunt. So I look at the wind the day before, the night before, I look at the wind direction, and that crosses off a whole bunch of my possibilities off the list. And say, all right, with the northeast wind, these are the tree stands that I can go to. So you eliminate a lot of where you can go just from the wind direction. So these are the kinds of things you learn. You learn when you can pull the bow back and when you can't. You know, the deer obviously can't be looking up at you. They can't be wired up. So you can hit a target on paper or shooting at a 3D target, but it's nothing like hunting. You just have to get, and you have to go out and you just have to learn it.
Yep.
And it takes, it's like anything else. And you know, the more you learn, the better you get, the more satisfaction you can have with it. But it's just a lot involved with it. I don't know of anything that's more exciting, that's more heart pounding, more where you get the adrenaline going than hunting. I don't know of anything else other than the analogies I've given you, you know, with the sports.
Yeah. You mentioned that hunting has brought you all over the world. Do you know how many countries?
Not tons of them. I've been to Canada many times. I've been to different provinces in Canada, Northwest Territories and Ontario and Alberta, Manitoba, lots of different areas in Canada. I've been to Alaska. I've been to Newfoundland. Been to Australia for water buffalo. Been to Africa many times. But I mean, there's lots of places that I haven't been. I haven't been to Spain. I haven't been to Argentina. I haven't been, you know. But I'm near the end of my career, right? I'm towards the end of it, where I don't want to work that hard anymore. It's like a boxer that wants to continue to box, but they don't want to train anymore. They just want to get in the ring.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be in the ring, right? Or you shouldn't be fighting the world champion. You want to fight somebody, it needs to be somebody a little bit easier than that. So I'm to the point where I'm satisfied with what I've done. I've met all my goals. Anything that I ever set out to do, I kept after it till I did it. Like I said, the mountain view took me 6 trips. I didn't quit on the first trip. I kept training and going. I didn't go every year, maybe every 2 or 3 years. But it was on the list. It was on the list. I was going to get it one way or the other. So I completed all of that. The last thing was the Canadian moose. I needed to upgrade that so I could have the 3rd one on the wall. I got that last year. If I get another Canadian moose with this main tag, you know, that'll just be a bonus. But I don't feel that I have to. It's not as pressing. So I'm much more relaxed, and that's how I choose. I mean, there's just certain hunts I do not want to do anymore. I don't need to set foot in Alaska ever again in my life and deal with those mosquitoes, and deal with the muskeg, and deal with the rain and the fog.
You said the muskeg?
Muskeg is the terrain there that's really kind of mushy. It's like being on a sponge. The tundra,
yeah. It's
just really hard to walk in. And then you're living in a tent, a little tent with freeze-dried food, and those hunts can be miserable. You're there for a reason. You're there to get whatever you're going after, and I'm glad I did all of that. But I don't want to do any. I can't. like I said, I'm the boxer that would like to continue to box, but I can't train like I used to. I just can't do it anymore. And I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to put the effort that I know it would take. Otherwise, if I tried any of those hunts, I'd be miserable. So you get to a point in life where you need to change things a little bit and get modified. I don't know how many more animals I'm going to go after.
Do you have a dream animal in mind?
No, my dream was the brown bear. My big dream was to get an Alaska brown bear.
I would love for you to tell some stories. I honestly just wanted to point to some of these and say, could you tell us that story? But could you tell us the Alaska brown bear?
Well, to me, it was the ultimate, right? To get an Alaska brown bear, which is the biggest species of grizzly bear, to get an Alaska brown bear with a bow and arrow, I just thought was the top of what any bow hunter could ever do. Now, a lot of people would disagree. Everyone's got their top. And a lot of people would say it's the sheep. Sheep are at the pinnacle for most hunters. Rifle hunters, archery hunters, they're at the pinnacle because of how hard they are to get, right? And the terrain that they're in. But for me, it was all about the grizzly bear. And I watched the video of Fred Bear, who was the first archer, one of the first archers that videotaped his hunts. He was on television. He had a series on television way back in the 50s, I guess it was, 60s maybe. And I saw him harvest with a recurve bow. This bear just walked up the beach and he was behind a big rock. And this big giant bear walked right by him and he shot it with an arrow. And I said, that's gotta be it. That's gotta be the ultimate. So that was always my dream. I hunted once for a brown bear. I'm gonna say it was, I don't know, 1995. Went to Alaska, saw a few brown bear, didn't get one. And so I had to do it. So a couple of years later, I did some research. My problem was when the season was. It was always when I was in school, having to teach, right? So I called Alaska Fish and Game one time, just thinking there's got to be a place I can hunt there when I'm off. And they said, yeah, there's one area near King Salmon, Alaska, that has a June season. And the rumor was, or I forget who explained it to me, the reason why they had a June season was, I don't know if this is true or not, but what I was told was, there was no other place in Alaska you can hunt them in June. And of course I was off in June. I was off school early June, so I could do it. So what I was told was they had a season in June. Some brown bear, Alaska brown bear, killed somebody, killed a little kid or something. And these little villages have dumps where they put all their garbage, right? All the bears hang around the dumps. And one night these people went out and they just wiped out those bears because this kid had been killed, right? And so that they can make those people legal, they created a June season so they didn't have to lock all those people up. So that's what I heard. So anyway, they said, yeah, there's a June season, here's where it is. I said, okay, give me some outfitters that hunt there. They gave me the name of 2 outfitters. I talked to both of them. And I couldn't decide, and then the one guy called. I said, look, I'm a bow hunter. Are you okay with that? Because a lot of guys are not. If you're hunting a dangerous animal like that, a lot of outfitters say, no, I'm not taking a bow hunter. So now there's lots and lots of outfitters that do it. But back then, it was much harder to find an outfitter that was willing to take a bow hunter on a grizzly bear hunt. So this guy said, yep, I'm perfectly happy to do it. We're going to get you nice and close. He was very confident that he was going to get me close to a grizzly bear, or a brown bear. So I ended up hunting with him, and I flew into King Salmon. He picked me up, went to his house, spent the night, and then the next morning we got ready. We were on 4-wheelers, and we went about 30 miles outside of the town of King Salmon, and we set up on top of this hill, this knob, so we can see a long way around us, right? We can get a 360 degree. And then from there, it's, you set up your tent, and you set these tents up in in the brush, in the alders, so that if you get pretty windy in Alaska, you don't want your tent to get blown around or blown over. So you may carve out a little area in the brush and put the tent there. And it's just you and the guy in the tent. That's all that tent will fit. It's 2 people in the tent. And you're bringing in all your freeze-dried foods. You're going to live right there. You have to pack in light. You can't bring a whole bunch of stuff. So everything you bring is as light as you can get it. So we would go and check. You go up to the top of the knob, and we would glass. So I think with all this kind of hunting, there's lots and lots of binocular hours and hours and hours of just looking with a pair of binoculars. So we were seeing bear. And it wasn't, we were just a few here and there. It wasn't like there was tons of them. And on the 3rd day, he spotted a bear. It was about a mile away, a mile and a half away. He said, we need to get over there. And so we got as close as we could with the quads. Can't go everywhere with those things. And then we got off the quads and we hiked over. And on the way over there, I ran into this monster brown bear.
The one that you were not trying to go after?
We didn't see this one. This was a different one.
Oh.
So another reason why you can't hunt in June, I think, is because that's their mating season. So they want them to go ahead and mate before you can hunt them. But this one area had a June season. So I could not get close to that bear. He was absolutely gigantic. He was a 10-foot bear. That's always the goal. If you get one 10-foot, that's like the elite.
Is that about 10 feet?
That's 9 feet 2 inches. So that bear I didn't get a shot at, and all of a sudden there was bear everywhere. There was just brown bear all over the place, and it looked to us like they were making a big circle. We'd watch them. They'd go up into the hills. They'd come back down. It looked to us like they were making a big circle. So we thought that there was a hot female there, and these bears were just chasing her and following her. So we got up into where we thought the circle was. We got on the edge of the circle and just waited. And it wasn't that long. So I'm behind brush that's maybe 4 feet high, 5 feet high. I have a video camera. But you have a guide, he's got a gun because it's illegal. A resident can hunt without a gun, but a non-resident has to have a gun backup, right? So you got a guy backing you up with a rifle. So we're standing there and we're watching this bear come down the ridge. And the wind's going this way, and the bear made a big circle around us, and he was going to smell us because the wind was heading that way. And the outfitter whispered in my ear. The bear was 40 yards away, and the outfitter whispered. He said, "He's going to smell you. When he smells you and he turns, shoot him when he turns." And I already decided I wasn't doing that because that meant I would have to rush the shot. I wasn't going to rush it. I wasn't going to shoot a moving bear.
He wanted you to shoot broadside on like.
Yeah, when it made its turn.
Yeah. Okay.
That's tough for a bow hunter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something I didn't want to risk. And so, sure enough, he was 40 yards out. If he had stepped a little bit, he was up in the air, he's standing on both feet, he's sniffing up in the air, and he doesn't smell us. But when he got back down on all fours, if he had smelled us, he'd have run. He'd have been gone. So what he did was he got back down on all fours, and doesn't he come back around? And now it looks like he's going to come right in front of me. He's going to come right in front of me, like 10 yards. And I'm watching, I can see this thing coming. I'm behind the bush, so I've got the bow, he's got his gun, he's about 5 yards behind me. And I have the video camera at my feet. I can't video and bow hunt at the same time. So I had the camera at my feet. I have all this footage after I shot and stuff.
I would love to see that.
So anyway, he's coming and coming, and I just keep saying to myself, all right, Maddock, make the shot, take your time. And I was saying, all right, make sure he goes past you. Because if he doesn't come past me, and I draw the bow, he's going to see me. He'll see me out of his peripheral vision. Can't let him do that. So what I described was, and I wrote an article about this whole thing, I could see him filling up the gaps of sunlight in these bushes, and I could see the sunlight would disappear. He was filling up the gaps in the bush where it was. And he's coming, he's only going to be 12 yards away. And he's coming. These things have gigantic heads on them. And it's a mental game. You just have to calm yourself down and you got to make the shot. So you're constantly got this little bow hunter on your shoulder trying to tell you what to do, because the instinct is to rush the shot, because you're so, by that time you're in such a state where you want to get the shot over with. You must have experienced something like that if you're hunting for deer. And you can't do it that way. You have to take your time. And so he comes, and now he's right in front of me. I let him go by a little bit, and I turn, and if I couldn't miss, it was like shooting in a barn. It was that close to me, and I put a really good shot. He turned and ran, and I picked up the camera, and I put the video on him, and I watched him lumbering away, and then he just piled up. He only went about 80 yards. After the shot, he probably lived less than 10 seconds.
Do you get it in the heart?
No, I shot him. The bow shot is through both lungs, not the heart. They'll live a little longer, and they'll go a little further if you get the heart. They'll drop quicker if you take out both lungs. They took out both lungs. I mean, you can see the picture over there when the arrow was in it. But there was no thrill like that. I was so absolutely thrilled, and I said to the guy, if I don't get another animal for the rest of my life, I will have done this.
It's incredible.
There's nothing like it. Absolutely nothing like that kind of an experience.
People listening should look up videos, or if you have one, of bow hunters with a grizzly bear standing up like within 12, 15 yards.
They're all over YouTube.
Yeah,
they're all over
watching it.
Yeah, they're all over YouTube these days.
Yeah, it's just unfathomable to be that close to a 9, 10-foot bear. The muskox.
It's incredible. The muskox was, you hunt those above the Arctic Circle. At that time, there was no season in warm weather. Everything was done in the winter, so I did that in March. Now you can hunt them in Greenland as a muskox season. You can hunt them in June. You can hunt them when it's a lot warmer. But the hides are not nearly as nice, right? The hair is much longer. It's better when it's cold, but it's cold. And I hate the cold, right? So I wanted to get a muskox, and so I booked a hunt, and that was in Cambridge Bay, which is just a little tiny Inuit village.
How do you even get there?
You can fly there, right? I flew into Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, and then over to, this is also in the Northwest Territories, but further north. And so you land there, and I spent one night in a little dinky hotel, and then we were going to go out the next day. And the way you hunt muskox is you're out on the ice, basically on the ocean, but it's all ice. And you get pulled by a sled. You're in like a box. It's almost like a big coffin. You're in the box and you're bouncing along the ice. And you have a guide that's in a snowmobile, and he's pulling you with a snowmobile. And so one thing I will never forget is on the way out to where we were going to hunt. It took us probably 3 hours to get out where we were going to hunt. On the way, and out in the middle of nowhere was this Inuit guy with his snowmobile, and he had cut a hole in the ice. And I'll never forget, he was pulling up these fish, and he'd get a fish, and it was probably a lake trout or something, I don't know what it was, and he'd let it flop on the ice. And within minutes, that thing was frozen solid. He would pick it up by the tail, and jam it into the ice. It's just frozen solid. So it's 40, 50 below. And so that was an experience. So anyway, we get out to where you're gonna hunt muskox. We spent the night in this little shack. I mean, it was just a plywood shack. You spend the night there. Say one of the worst things is having to go to the bathroom and having to go out when it's 40 or 50 below and do your thing. But we get up the next day, and the way you hunt muskox is you stay after them, and they eventually will circle up. So they make a big circle, right? And that's their defensive mode. And then you have to try to get in there close enough with the bow. So I got within 20 yards. I have my bow, I've got my quiver full of arrows, and I had one arrow that I wanted to be ready with, so it was in my pocket. The fletching part where you knock it, where the veins are, and it didn't get caught. It was in my, and I had hand warmers. And so I'm 20 yards to the muskox. I took out the arrow, I put it on, I made a good shot. And it runs maybe 20 yards, I want to get another shot. Even though this was a good shot, I wanted to get another shot. So I grabbed the arrow, put it on, and the knock broke. I grabbed another arrow, knock broke. All the other arrows, that plastic knock broke. When I tried to put it on the string, it was so cold that every one of them broke. If I didn't have that arrow in my pocket keeping that warm,
You wouldn't have had it.
I wouldn't have had it. I would have been helpless. So now I got a guy with a gun. I don't want to pick that gun up. I'm a bow hunter. It's kind of meaningless when there's a bullet in an animal that you're bow hunting. It would have been a disaster for me to go all the way to above the Arctic Circle and deal with this and not being able to get the shot. I'm right there with it. So it could have easily been, that arrow could have been in that quiver. I could have tried to put the arrow on. I never read any articles that said the same thing. You think somebody else would have experienced that and wrote about it.
No.
Or the outfitters would have said, hey, you got to get a different kind of knock. I've never heard anything. Didn't even think about it. But it makes sense. You got these plastic knocks and they get cold. They're gonna break when you try to put them on the string. So anyway, the muskox, he doesn't go far. He doesn't live long. He piles up. And so I wanted a full mount. I wanted to get a full mount because they had that beautiful long hair. And I wanted to do it that way. So back then, this was probably back in the early 90s, I guess. Back then, airlines were very liberal with luggage and bringing back animals. So I took a big, giant Cabela's duffel bag and I said, put that full mount hide in that duffel bag and freeze it. So that's what we did. That thing had to weigh, that hide had to weigh 125 pounds, just the hide. And I took it, and I checked it in, and they took it, and I didn't pay any extra fee for weight or size or anything. And it landed in Philadelphia and came out of the conveyor belt. And I brought it home that way. So, that's my muskox story. But you can see how different these stories are. They're all different. They're all adventures. Every one of them is a different kind of an adventure.
I don't think, I was having some conversations with friends earlier, and they were like, you really think he's only hunted like the majority of the animals with a bow? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty positive.
I've always hunted with a bow.
Yeah.
Never, that was always the goal.
Yeah.
But if you don't hit one right, like there's 3 animals in here that I had to finish off with a rifle. But that's it.
Yeah.
Just 3 of these animals, and all the rest were bow. In fact, when I did the desert sheep hunt, I did kill that with a bow, with a gun. And that tag is very, very hard to get. I drew it, right? So that, if I had to buy that, if I had to go to Mexico to hunt that animal, it would be $60,000. But I drew it, right? So that was a $7,000 hunt instead of a $60-some thousand hunt. It was affordable. I can't pay $60,000 to go hunt a sheep. It was affordable, but you're never gonna draw that tag again, ever. So I told the outfitter, I said, look, I'm gonna hunt this thing with a bow. I'll let you know when I'm ready. Don't even bring a gun. Leave it back at camp. I'll tell you when I've had enough and I'm ready. So I got 30 yards a couple times to desert sheep, but I always got busted. And the thing that got me wasn't the fact that I didn't want to continue. I would have, but I had a 1-year-old granddaughter, and I was missing her so badly. I had to get back home. I said, that's it, I can't take being away from my granddaughter anymore. Let's take the gun. So the next day I went up and I shot it with a gun. So that's the difference between bow hunting and rifle hunting, right? Don't have anything against rifle hunting. But it took me 11 days, I hunted 11 days with a bow. Got close a few times, but I couldn't seal the deal, I got busted. Went out the next day with a gun and got it. When you can shoot from 200 yards or 300 yards, it makes a big difference. Closing the distance to get a bow shot takes a lot of patience and a lot of effort. A lot of crawling on your hands and knees, crawling on your belly, making sure the wind's right. There's a lot to it. But that's what I choose. That's the experience I choose. So the answer is yes. There's only a few animals in here that were taken with a rifle. There's only one that I put the bow down for. And it was 2, I think, that I wounded, and the right thing to do was finish it. But I went back. I always went back to do it with a bow. If I had to put a bullet in it, I was not satisfied, so I would go back and hunt it again until I got it with just a bow.
Which ones, did you mention which ones those were?
I haven't mentioned that. One was the black wildebeest, which is back there. I didn't get that with a bow. I wounded it, and we had to finish it with a rifle. And I think the other one was another African animal. I think maybe the eland. Not sure, but luckily all the rest have been, clean archery kills.
Have you decided not to get all of the big 5, just out of, like, you don't feel like you have the need for it?
You can't do it. It's just gotten to be so astronomically expensive.
Like an elephant tag is 30.
I really don't have any desire to kill an elephant. I don't know, just something about the elephant there. I don't know. The way they have their family groups and whatnot, just they seem to be just on a higher plane. You know what I mean? They got brains. They're smart. They seem to be acting a little bit more like human beings.
Yeah.
Right. So I really don't have any. But if I did, I don't blame anybody for wanting that challenge. I mean, what a challenge that would be to get a big elephant with a bow, and a bunch of people have done it. It's doable.
Yeah.
And if that's the challenge they want, I'm all, go for it. But it's gotten so expensive. I mean, to get a male lion, it's gotten to be unbelievably expensive.
You got one back here?
I have one, and they're you got to go to Tanzania or someplace like that to hunt. Some places have like the United States has stepped in again, so you can't bring that thing in. This Cecil the lion thing, that whole debacle, even though that hunt was done perfectly legally, the guy had all his permits. The thing came out of the park and went on private property. Well, those private landowners are not putting up lions on their property, right? So they get permits. If a lion comes out or elephant comes out of the park, we're going to give you a permit. Because now it's in conflict with human beings. It's not in a controlled setting where you're driving around in a vehicle looking at those animals. Now they're in conflict with humans and they need to be taken out. So permits are given outside of those parks for when animals come out. The same thing happens in Yellowstone, right, with the bison. They stay in the park, fine. They come out, okay, they're going to get hunted. Same with elk, right? They're going to get hunted because now they're in conflict with all those people that are trying to feed the population, right? All the vegetarians they're trying to feed, right? So those animals have got to go so the vegetarians can have their food. So they get in conflict with human beings, so they need to be controlled. So the same thing happens in Africa. But what I was getting to is, I don't think you can bring back a lion. You might not be able to bring one back into the United States anymore. So there's the United States sticking their nose into somebody else's business. If African countries want to allow and generate all that money, right? I can tell you schools are built from hunting, from guys going over there and hunting, right? All that money goes into building schools for those people. And I started to talk about that black rhino. There was one black rhino that was going to be allowed to be hunted, just one. Old.
Was that Corey Milton?
I don't know, but what I'm getting to is this was back a number of years, and they were going to allow one old black rhino to be hunted. And it was going to go up for auction. They went for $300,000 or $400,000. This goes back 15 or 20 years, so I mean it was a lot of money. And the antis shut it down. They said, no, you can't do that. And so the politicians caved on it. So instead of $300,000 or $400,000 going to the preservation of the black rhino, paying to stop poaching, they put their foot down. They don't see the big picture. The big picture is you take out some, create the income, protect the rest. That's conservation.
Have you had any close near-death experiences?
Yeah.
Too many. any
Really two. One is I was scared to death one time on one of the mountain goat hunts. Right. You're scared to death, and they're often no fun because you're out on cliffs, you're on shale slides. People get killed every year hunting those things. And you know, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm not a mountain climber. So you put yourself into those positions, and one false move, you're going to drop 1,000 feet. So you're on those hunts, and they are really scary. I'd rather be 10 yards from a lion or brown bear or whatever than those kinds of hunts. They're totally scary. So you're constantly worried about your life. That you're gonna fall or something. Because if you fall, it's over. But the one hunt that I was on that the animal almost got me was on the Cape Buffalo hunt in South Africa.
What happened there?
So I went there in March when I had a break. I went on my spring break. It was March. Not a great time to go to Africa and hunt, South Africa. And I only had my spring break, so I only have a few days because it takes 2 days to get over there and 2 days to get back. So I have the weekends on either side of spring break, and I got spring break, which is 5 days. So I only had a few days to hunt over there. I wanted to get a female lion. So we got the female lion.
Is that this one?
That's the one over there. That was a baited hunt. So you put up a bait,
you hunted the bait one morning and then
you hunt the bait, and you don't hunt a bait unless you know the animals are coming in. So you hunt the bait. You set up a pop-up blind, and you sit over the bait, and you just hope you're going to be there when it comes in. Often they're hunted at night, so you might have to use a setup where you have a rheostat and a light and a bush pig. And that's a bush pig over there I just got last year. If you have to hunt at night, you obviously got to see, right? So if you're hunting a leopard at night or a lion at night, and you hear it at the bait, you know it's there, but you can't see it. It's pitch black. So they'll have set up a system where you can slowly turn up the light. It's going to be a red light. So you slowly turn up the light so that it doesn't scare the animal. The animal doesn't get spooked because the light's coming up slowly, and it's a red light. So that's how you often hunt these dangerous game if they're an animal that likes to feed at night mostly. Luckily, it wasn't a nighttime situation. The female lion came in, it was about 20 yards, I guess. And I was able to get a good shot at it. It was funny, it came running right past the blind between me and you. So after I shot, the bait's over there, it came running within a few feet of me. Luckily it kept going out that side. So that was a great hunt, and I got that all on film too. So now it's time for the buffalo hunt. And on the buffalo hunt, I had Angus Brown was my professional hunter who I knew well. He was the guy that originally donated the hunt that I won all those years before at the Pope and Young Club. So he and I became very good friends. And we got to a water hole when he picked up some tracks of a Cape Buffalo. He knew it was a bull. So we started to track it. So he's in front of me and I'm behind him. And we're tracking, and these guys that are trackers over there, it's phenomenal how they can do that. It's very sandy, and you don't understand how they can track in that sand, but somehow they can do it. Because all these other animal tracks are, coming over those tracks, and there's other buffalo tracks, and how do they follow the one that they want? It's just, I don't get it, but they do it. So we were tracking this thing for about an hour, I guess, and then he stops. And he turns around and he points, and I can see this big Cape Buffalo was raking his horns. He was at a bush. He was only 15 yards, and he's raking with his horns. And it was very brushy. And I had a bow that was a little bit taller than what I generally would like to hunt with. And it was a special bow. It was called a safari bow, a Matthew safari bow that you could set to very high pounds. So I had it set to 95 pounds, which is a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And I practiced. My goal was to get up to being able to take 12 shots to practice. So I built my way up to be able to shoot that 95-pound bow. You have to use a very heavy arrow. So back then, now you can get heavy arrows that are made for Cape Buffalo, or made for hippopotamus, or made for these bigger animals. And they didn't have that back then. So a guy put together for me an arrow shaft inside of another. So a double arrow to get enough weight. You needed a very heavy arrow, and you need a 2-blade broadhead for penetration. So you need a very heavy setup, heavy poundage and heavy arrow to get into something that big. If you hit a rib or something, you got to be able to bust through that rib. So anyway, the buffalo's there, it's 15 yards. I get down on my knees and I started to crawl towards him. And it's all kinds of brush above me. It's just like a tunnel. And he's only right there. He's about 8 yards and he's raking. He doesn't know I'm there, and it's an easy shot, quartering away from me, perfect shot. And I went to raise my bow up and I could not get the bow. It kept hitting the brush above me. I couldn't get the shot. It was like the bow wouldn't fit in the space I was in. So crawled backwards, got back out, and I said, I can't get the shot. So we waited, and he stopped raking that bush, and he starts to walk away. So now we're following him, and I'm behind him, but he's kind of looking away. And I'm behind a bush, so if you picture bushes open, maybe a bush every 5 or 10 yards, really a good bow hunting situation, because you can go from one bush to the other and hide. So we followed him that way for a little bit, and I get into a position where he's now stopped, and now I got to come from behind the bush. So he's looking away, he's quartering away, it's a nice shot, he's only 10 yards away. And I come from behind the bush, and I pull back. Now I'm at full draw, and I'm fully exposed in the open. I'm totally open. If he turns, he can see me. Doesn't he turn? At that point, I'm at full draw, he turns. Now he's walking right towards me. Terrible shot, right? You don't want to shoot an animal when they're facing you. It's all bone there. It's just a bad shot. So now I'm thinking in my head, now what do I do? If I let the bow down, he's going to see me and he's going to charge us. If I shoot him, it's a bad shot.
And you're at full 95
I'm at full draw, 95 pounds. And I had to make a decision. So he got so close to me, he was about 8 yards, I guess, and I'm thinking, all right, bad shot, but it's a little bit better than dead facing me. So he's quartering to me. And I tucked it in as much as I could behind the shoulder without hitting the shoulder. You don't want to hit the shoulder, because you're not going to get into where you need to get into. I hit it as good as I possibly could hit him. The arrow went in, I got good penetration, but the angle was bad. I know I only have one lung. Well, an animal can go a long ways on one lung. So now he's not very happy. Now he's grunting and he's sort of bucking a little bit, and he turns and he starts walking away. And now I need to get another arrow because I know I only have one lung. I got to get another arrow. Try to get that other lung. So we're following him, and it was like, I call it red light, green light. You played that game?
Yeah.
The person turns around and you try to sneak up on them, and they turn back around, you better be behind something. That's what was happening. And this thing would turn around, and as I watched it turn, I'd have to jump behind the bush. So I made sure that I could get to the next bush if he turned around. So I'm following him that way. And finally I get another shot. He's walking away from me, but he's a little further out. He's about 20 yards out. And I'm jazzed up at this point, and I'm kind of, I mean, it's a mental game, right? You do the best you can in this situation. So I shot, and I didn't hit him very well. I hit him through the guts. That's not a good shot. So he's really mad now. His nose is on the ground like a hound dog, and he's sniffing. He's smelling, right? And he's just looking all over the place. If you picture a dog that's trying to pick up a scent, that's just going crazy, just going all over the place. So I'm trying to stay on him. I'm trying to stay with him. It's red light, green light. Get behind the bush. He turn or come out. Get behind the bush. The whole 9 yards with that. I get up to him again. He's about 12 yards, 15 yards, and he was quartering away, and I hit him great. I hit him on the other side. Now I know I got both lungs, and he's now back on, nose on the ground, but I know he's going to die. He's going to drop. And he's still doing his thing. I'm behind a bush that's about 5 feet high, and there's a guy behind me, another professional hunter with a video camera. He's videoing the whole thing. And he whispered in my ear, he said, "He's looking for you." And at that moment, that Cape buffalo stopped and went, "Ugh!" Made that grunt and looked right where I was at that bush. He was looking right where I was. He couldn't see me, but he either smelled me at that instant or he heard that guy whisper. Here he comes. He's coming right at the bush. I do the only thing I can do. I start to run. The camera guy runs. Right? You can see all this in the film. The camera's going all over the place. And I fall. I get caught up in my own feet. I got Angus, the other guy, the guy with the big gun, right, with big bullets. And I'm thinking, I'm on the ground, and I'm trying to get back up. I'm thinking, now seconds, this is only seconds that are going by. I'm thinking, how come this guy's not shooting? I got a Cape Buffalo coming after me. So I hear the shot, finally. I'm on the ground, I hear the shot. And I turn, I look, and the Cape Buffalo's 30 yards away, and he's got his head down like this. So I back out, and we all kind of got together. And I said, I couldn't see what happened because I'm on the ground trying to get up. He said, what happened was the Cape Buffalo knew you were behind that bush. He came to that bush, he jumped over it. He saw you lying on the ground. He turned his head. When they turn their head, that means they're ready to stick you, because what they do is if you've ever watched a Cape Buffalo in a lion fight or killing something, they hook you and they throw you up over their back, or they throw the animal up over their back. So he turned to hook me. He was within 18 inches of my body, and the shot came when he turned his head. The bullet hit the back of his horn. And that was enough momentum to get him to just miss me. So the professional hunters was worried if he hit in the neck, he would drop on me. 2,000 pounds of weight right on, drop on me, right? But he had to shoot, so he shot. And he didn't hit it anywhere in the body. He hit the horn. And that was enough to get it to veer off. Then within 20 or 30 seconds, the Cape Buffalo dropped. So I counted as a bow kill because there's no bullet in the body of the animal.
Yeah.
There's a big hole in the back of the horn, but there's no hole in the body. It was all done by arrows. So that thing was within a couple feet of running me right through. There's hunters killed by Cape Buffalo every year.
Every year.
So that was as close as I came, and it was funny. My wife, for some reason, she knew something because she never worried about me on a hunt, but she called Angus, the PH, and he said, "Make sure you take care of my husband." So she knew something, and she said that about the very time that this was happening, she woke up from a dead sleep. She knew something. It was weird. It was totally weird. She'll tell you about it. If you ever ask her, she'll tell you about it. She, for some reason, she was very worried about that hunt, and she knew something had happened, exactly when it happened. So I was close. It was really close to having a real issue.
I've heard two stories secondhand that they had told me to ask you. The one, you had a head-on accident in Alaska, Canada.
It wasn't Alaska. It was in. I was on a black bear hunt, and you bait black bear, and you put out a bunch of baits. And I'd go up every year after school, and you didn't need an outfitter; you could just go. So I had a friend up there that was in Quebec, and I'd call him up, and I'd say, "All right, we're coming up. There's 3 or 4 of us coming up. Put some baits out for us." So he'd put about 10 baits out, and we would go, and we would always bring other bait. You know, we'd go to donut shops or whatever, and we'd get other bait. When we'd get there, we'd put out another 10 baits. We'd have maybe 20 baits going. So we're out checking baits one day, and at that time they didn't even have 4-wheelers, they only had 3-wheelers. I'm on the 3-wheeler, and we're gonna check the baits. You wanna know if the bait got hit. If the bait's getting hit, you're gonna hunt there. You know, it's on your list, depending on, you know, you gotta check the wind still. If the wind is bad, you don't hunt it. But you need to know if the baits are getting hit. So we're checking baits and taking more bait out. So I'm on this logging road thinking, who's going to be on this logging road? And it's thick brush on either side. You can't see anything. It's just a wall of brush. And I came around the corner. So imagine coming around a corner anywhere where you can't see. And all of a sudden, there I am, and there's a truck right there, a pickup truck coming right at me. I didn't have time to do anything except jump off of it. I didn't even have time to turn out of his way. That's how close he was. I jumped off. And he hit, which leg did he hit? He hit which leg? I got scars. He hit this leg, which I've had the knee replaced 10 years ago. But he hit this leg. That's what this scar is. So he hit that leg. I got everything off and out of the way except my leg. Because as I'm coming over the 3-wheeler, obviously my leg is the last thing to clear. When he hit my leg, spanned me around, and I ended up in the hospital, big swollen knee. But I was really lucky to get off of that quad before it was head on. I mean, he's coming at 20 miles an hour, I'm going 10 or 15 miles an hour, and there was no place to go except jumping off.
Just a full instant reaction.
I've only been hurt on hunts. I broke my leg on a bison hunt in British Columbia. I broke my leg on that hunt. So I played football, I did lacrosse, I only had minor things, sprained ankle here and there, some bruises, but hunting can be, you know, can be difficult. I mean, a lot of guys get hurt on hunts.
Travis Heinrichs, I heard that you guys have a story. I don't know if you know what that's all I heard is that you and Travis
I
Heinrichs.
don't know. I know he killed a pretty good buck out of a tree stand that he and I put up. I don't know. I can't remember any stories. Give me some.
That's all I heard was ask Jody Maddock about the Travis Heinrichs story.
You have to ask Travis because I don't remember anything out of the ordinary. Unless it might have been Travis that we had set up. I used to do videotapes and I used to sell the videotapes. Now there's hunting tapes all over the place, but early on there wasn't. And I used to carry these big cameras with big giant recording things. I mean, they were huge. And the shot that people wanted was the arrow coming through the animal. So I had that all set up. Nobody had ever done it. I had the perfect setup, and I think it was Travis. I had him in a tree and was in an apple orchard, and I had this thing set up where if the deer came through, I had a camera here and I had a camera on the other side. And you would see the hunter up in the tree and the arrow. And it was just perfect. This deer walked right through, and you could see it on both cameras, and he didn't shoot for whatever reason. I don't remember why. But that was the end of that opportunity. That's the only thing I can think of. I think it was Travis that I don't know. I can't think of any other. You have to go back and talk to whoever you talk to and find out what. Maybe I'm missing something.
I'll report back with it. Yeah, if I find out. I guess kind of on a different note of hunting, I mean, there's so many stories in here. You got this huge alligator, you got the different bears, you have the albino deer. Is there anything else you want to cover on hunting? And then I kind of just have a wrap-up question.
Well, I can tell you the story about that white deer.
I would love to hear it.
That was a deer that a lot of people knew about.
Yep.
And I had opportunities to hunt that deer, to kill that deer. A number of times I didn't do it because people like to watch the deer and look at the deer, which I get. But as you know, from a hunter, it's a novelty. I mean, where do you get a white deer, right? And you don't get a deer with antlers like that. It's called a piebald deer when it's got brown mixed in. So a lot of people knew about that deer, and they would drive and go look at it and see it. I wasn't going to kill it, but I noticed when he got to be about 4 years old that his condition was really bad. And he was having problems with his hip. He was walking with a limp, and I noticed that when you can see the top of the spine of an animal, it means they're not getting the nutrition that they need. And so I decided to hunt that animal, and I did kill him. It was in January. It was cold, and once I knew that I was going after him, I was totally focused on that deer. I wasn't going to take any other buck. That was going to be the deer because I knew it was probably his last year of life. He wasn't going to be around anymore. So I have a different philosophy. Everybody likes to look at them, and I like to look at them, and I wasn't going to hunt that deer because I knew other people like to see it. But he's here now. And he looks beautiful.
So yeah,
in my opinion, he was on his way out anyway. So the other part of the story was when I shot it, I didn't tell anybody. My wife knew, and only one or two other people knew. I knew if it got out on the internet or something, it was going to be a big problem. So I didn't say a word to anybody. I didn't take any photographs of it. I didn't put anything out. There was no information about that deer being taken. And it's now probably 4 years since I've taken it. So people now probably have calmed down, I hope.
So this is the first time it's getting out?
It would have been a big emotional thing if the word got out that I had taken that deer, but it needed to be taken out. It was suffering, and it was that deer's time. Now I look at it as a lot of respect. When an animal goes up here, I have a lot of respect. There's a reason why it's here. It's because of the respect that I have, for that animal. And I did work pretty hard for it. And luckily, we had a lot of snow that year. He had never made it through that winter. There's just no way. So, and I can show you pictures. And when I did film this, when I took it to a taxidermist, the best thing is to take. If you're going to get a deer mounted or any animal, it's better if the taxidermist skins it out because they can do it really well. If you try to do it yourself, you can screw it up, put holes in it. Well, I've done animals myself when I'm on a hunt, but taxidermists are closed. I took it to a taxidermist, and so now I brought it back, and I just have the body, and now I'm gonna process it. I'm gonna get the meat. As soon as I cut into the back strap, when I got to the back, all kinds of green pus came out, right? So he had some kind of a really bad infection in his spine. And so that's the reason why he was looking in such poor condition. And when the spine is not flat, when it's raising up above the back, you know that animal's in really poor condition. And I could tell that. I mean, if I showed you that carcass, that thing's a tiny little thing. Well, it lost a tremendous amount of weight. And piebalds tend to be smaller anyway. They're kind of an inferior deer. They don't tend to live as long anyway. They're kind of, like the legs had to be shortened on that by about 6 inches. If you really study it, and you study the full amount there that's laying down versus that deer, even though they're the same age, you can see that piebald deer is a much smaller. They tend to be on the dwarfy side. Their legs are shorter.
Is it a genetic thing?
Mm-hmm. It's a genetic mutation. I did a thing once. It was like every 1 in 1,000 deer piebald. That one was in particular had a lot of white, a lot more white than a lot of piebalds do, and I've never seen a piebald with those kind of antlers.
You said this was 4 years ago? I think I might have a photo of that. Or I have a photo of an albino.
They have photos from what that deer did was he moved. He used to be here when he was only 1.5 years, and the college the professors have pictures of him.
Yep.
That's probably where he saw him, but he moved about a mile from here and was living in one of the areas that I hunt. So he had traveled that far. I knew it was the exact same deer because I have that picture. And where the spots are on that deer, where the brown, there's no question it's the exact same deer. But he was hanging out in an area that I hunt. And like I said, I let him go. I can't tell you how many times. I have videos of him, from my tree stand. But once he got to the point where I could see he wasn't gonna make it, it was time to help him out.
I heard.
But it was gonna be I did the right thing. But for a lot of people, how am I gonna explain that to somebody that like to drive every night and go watch that deer? How am I gonna explain that to them? Right? But they don't know the full story. They don't know the full thing. So rather than deal with all that emotion, I just shut up about it. And I said, well, there's going to be a time eventually where I can tell the story, and it won't be so emotional because a lot of time will have passed.
It's that time now.
I guess. I mean, I just told you. Told you about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you explained it pretty well, and it sounded like he was coming to the end, and it's cool that you're able to.
I really don't care what other people think.
Yep.
I know why I do what I do.
Yep.
I don't apologize for it. And the way I look at it is people just don't get it. They don't understand that there's a need for it. And they don't understand the challenge and the work and all that gets involved with it. I get it, yet everybody in their ancestry's got hunters. There isn't anybody that doesn't have hunting in their background from their ancestors.
I heard that you have the record for field dressing a deer.
Yeah, I can do it in about less than 30 seconds.
It's insane. Yeah. Maybe.
Now, I don't usually do it, but if I want to impress somebody,
I think we need to go hunting.
A number of times I said I can do that. I can do that in less than 30. Oh no, you can't. And I can't. I haven't really done a speed one like that in a while. I usually take my time, but I'm done in less than a minute. Even if I'm taking my time, it's about a minute.
I need you to teach me how to do that.
Pretty easy, really, once you get the hang of it. It's like, it's like filleting a fish. The first few times you've done it, it takes you forever, and you get the bones caught up and this and that. But once you learn the anatomy of the animal, it's really pretty quick.
I wanted to ask you. You mentioned a few times throughout our talk that you are.
What time is it, by the way?
It's watch is actually broken. But this is just my last question for
I
you.
got a granddaughter again. Let me see what time I'm supposed to pick her up. I think it's not till 2:50, so we're probably fine. We're good.
We're good? Sweet. Well, I mean, this is perfect too, because this is kind of my
Crescendo.
yes. You mentioned you were a teacher a few times at the nearby high school, A&C Academy New Church, and I heard from Dr. Farr you taught chemistry, IPS, and algebra, and that you had a very strong belief and emphasis in teaching kids about responsibility, which I think is probably more in need than ever. So I would just love for you to touch on that.
Well, when I became a teacher, I was, and once you've lived life, you realize that irresponsible people cause everybody a lot of problems. So any issues in the world that are a problem or an issue, you can backtrack at the people just doing the wrong thing. They're just being irresponsible. So my goal was to not put any more irresponsible people into the world, or do whatever I could. So I used to convince the students of why I was about to do what I was going to do with their grading and whatnot. And I would have them break up into groups. This is day one of class. They'd break up into groups, and I would say, all right, you've worked for the last 10 years. You've been a landscaper or whatever business you want, and you've saved and saved and saved. Now you're ready to start your own business. And as part of your business, you need to go hire 5 people. What are you looking for in those 5 people? What are you looking to, what are you looking to hire? What kind of characteristics or traits, behaviors do you want them to have? Because all your money's wrapped up in this business. It's gotta work. And you're dependent on these employees that you hire. So they'd get in the corner and they'd write down what they felt was important. They wanted hard workers. They didn't want anybody stealing from them. People needed to show up on time. All the right things. They know what the right things are. So I'd put them up on the board and I would say, all right, you got to come up with one word for all these things. And we would always boil it down to responsible. I'm looking for people that are responsible to work for me. And then I would say, and I let them know, okay, I'm going to hold you to it. Now you told me what was important. Now I'm going to hold you to it. So I was always amazed how I would get students that still, by the time they were in 9th grade, that thought it was okay to not turn their homework in. Here they're 9th graders. Well, they're going to vote in a couple of years. So I was tough, right? So, and the other thing was the passing grade on any assignment or any test was an 80. They said, we're not doing this 70 thing. It's not good enough. We're gonna do 80. So if you didn't get an 80 on a homework assignment, as an example, or let's say you didn't turn your homework in, you got a 0 on the homework. But the way a lot of teachers would do it, the kid would be off the hook. Your penalty is the 0. But the homework assignment is there for them to learn. I wasn't letting them not learn. So they had to do the assignment anyway. And so, but they still got the 0, and they still had to get an 80 on it. So if a kid didn't do his assignment, he got a 0, and then I made him do it over, and he got a 60. I made him do it over again. You got an 85. Okay, you're done. You don't have to do the assignment anymore. What do you think your grade is? Oh, it's 0. So you don't get multiple chances in life. That's not how it works. You're a guy that works on transmissions. What are you going to do? Have that person come in 3 times until you get it right on the transmission? No, you're going to get it right the first time. So my averages in my classes were always in the low 70s. And the reason was kids were racking up a lot of zeros, but they would always finally get it. And I always gave them a lifeline. The lifeline was, you can call me up to 10 o'clock and I'll help you with your homework. I'm not going to give you any answers, but I'm going to give you clues. Remember what we talked about in class or whatever? So I spent a lot of time, I'd get a lot of phone calls when an assignment was due. A lot of times kids wouldn't call until they finally understood they were getting a low grade. They were getting a 0 and I'm making them do it anyway. So they get a lousy grade, they're going to study hall. So now they're in study hall. They figure out that it's a lot better to pick up the phone and call me. It'll save them a lot of aggravation, low grades, and time. And that's the responsible thing to do if you're an employee and you don't know how to do something. Well, what would you do? Well, you call the boss and say, hey boss, something's come up, I'm not gonna have this assignment in, is it okay if I turn it in the following day? Or okay, can you remind me how to do this? That's the responsible thing to do. The irresponsible thing to do is to just either not do it or do a poor job on it. So, I used to tell parents at the open house, which was always in the first couple weeks of school, I said, I'm going to do everything that's legal for me to do to make your son be a responsible individual. So I warned everybody that's how I was going to do it, but in the end, my evaluations were always really pretty good because people would get it. I'd say, you're in 9th grade. How do you not? What's going on here? How come you're still not turning in homework or think you can do a lousy job on it? So, same thing on the test, if they got below an 80, they're going to study hall, you're going to retake the test. Now, on those, I would raise the grade. For the homework assignment, they got to stick, I stuck with a 0. They didn't get out of any work. Why would I give a kid a 0 and then let him out of the assignment? He wins, right? If you play the game of the math, then I'll take a 0. Well, that's fine, but you're still going to do it.
You're the first person I've ever heard of it, but it's so true who's implemented that. And
Well, like I said, a lot of students have come to me 10 years later, 15 years later.
Yeah.
They thanked me.
I can
Thanked
see
me
that, yeah.
for making sure that my job was to do homework. It's your job. You got to take your job seriously. And you want to build a reputation that you're a responsible person. I said, look, you're telling me everybody's looking for responsible people. Don't you want to be known as a responsible person so you have a lot more choices in the jobs that are offered to you? If you're an irresponsible person, well, you're going to take what you can get. But when you're responsible, people are willing, and you have that reputation, people can count on you. Right? You're going to be on time. You're not going to steal from them. You're going to do the best job you can. That's who everybody's looking for. You're going to have a much happier life getting a job that is not like a job. It's something that you really like to do. There's a much greater chance of you getting a job that you really like to do if you have a reputation of being a responsible person.
Yeah, what also comes to mind for me is the times that teachers would allow students just to walk away and kind of harm themselves. It was like nobody's respecting each other because the teacher's not holding you accountable to any degree. They're not saying that's unacceptable. Like you can make those choices for yourself, but you still have to do it. So it's like the first time that I mean, it's a brutal thing because there are definitely times in school I would think.
Well, I had to set the tone early on. I had to, I would say, look, you're not allowed to yawn in my class. You're not allowed to put your head down on the desk. I said, that's totally rude. If I'm in the middle of talking to you and you get a big yawn, or you want to go to sleep, I said, we're not doing that. I said, if you do it, I'm throwing you out of class. So they would do it, and I would throw them out of class, and they would finally learn that that's not acceptable.
And also 9th grade freshman year, it's probably the best year to implement that.
Oh yeah, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's coming.
Yeah. So for your advice for people who might not have someone like that in their lives to hold them accountable, like you hold your students accountable, what would you say to your 20-year-old to maybe make themselves responsible?
Unfortunately, people are going to have to learn the hard way, like my students did. They had to learn the hard way by racking up some zeros, going to study hall. They learned the hard way. Now, some of them were great right off the bat, but you want them to learn the hard way in 9th grade rather than be 25 years old and learn the hard way, right? So it's better to try to get that stuff straightened out than, I don't know what, the advice I give to parents is, and I was on a moose hunt in Maine many years ago, and I was at the kitchen table, and this outfitter had these great kids. They were probably 10 and 12, a boy and a girl. We were out in the truck one day going out to hunt. I said, man, you have great kids. I said, what's your secret? He didn't take any time at all. He said, well, it's pretty simple. No means no. So if you think about it, when a child, as soon as they understand that no, when you tell them no, and no doesn't really mean no, well, they start taking over the house, right? You're in my house, no. No means no. So, everybody has a heart, right? And for me, my issue is I got these beautiful granddaughters, and I melt with those kids, right? So it's hard for me to stick by the advice that I give. But if you go through life, and by the time you get to high school, and you don't understand that no means no, you're only going to create problems for the teacher and the school, right? You have to respect authority. When you don't respect authority, you have a lot of learning to do until you do respect authority. Once you respect authority, like those kids at the table were so well mannered, and him telling me it was so simple. It was such a simple thing. Yeah, no means no. So that's the advice I give new parents and people when they're just getting married. When you start having kids, I'm just going to give you a little advice. Make sure no means no. You'll have a much easier time as a parent. If your kids get the idea that no doesn't really mean no, I said, now you're going to have some work ahead of you.
I think that's brilliant. Jody, anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap this up? I don't want to hold you from going to get your granddaughter.
Well, I'm an expert on a whole lot of subjects, but hunting is what you wanted to talk about. So I was happy to talk with you. You did a great job. I appreciate it, and I'd be interested to see what feedback you get.
Of course. I'm
going to be loved and I'm going to be hated. Just depends on the person that's watching.
Well, I thank you for your courage to walk through this with us, and the way you talk about these subjects is patient, and it comes through that you really care about animals, conservation, people. So thank you for having me here in this incredible room. And
you're welcome, and good luck with your first video. I wish you had a more handsome, good-looking person to do your first.
I think I got the best one. Let's go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, hope you got what you needed.
That was incredible. I have to say, I'm telling you, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So I came back.
That's going to be a long one. You must have to cut that thing up a bit.
I do long form on purpose.